We'll call this meeting to order. The Orange County Board of Education pledges to its citizens to conduct its business in a courteous and productive manner, showing respect for fellow board members, staff, and citizens. The board asks its citizens to conduct themselves with the same courtesy towards both school personnel and each other. As per board policy, Robert's Rules of Order will be used to conduct the meetings. A moment of silence will be observed before each meeting. The board asks that you check your cell phones and other electronic devices to be certain they are either turned off or on vibrate to avoid interruptions of the meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll take a moment of silence, and I would just like to ask everybody as you're reflecting to remember the tragedies that not only happened in our district, but Mebane as well, for those families, and keep them in your thoughts as well. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Dr. Felder?
Well, good evening. Good evening, Chair Atherton. Good evening, Vice Chair Purcell, to the entire board, to all of our staff, community, family members, and students. I see plenty of students in the audience tonight. Tonight, we have a number of recognitions. And so we are going to begin right here on the next slide with our students who participated in the North Carolina Governor's School. So the photos you see here were shared by Sarah Carson, a student at Cedar Ridge High School. Sarah, are you in the audience? There she is. She shared these pictures, who attended the Governor's School of North Carolina this past summer on the campus of the Governor's School West at Winston-Salem State University. Sarah's area of focus for the summer was visual arts. Governor's School of North Carolina is a multi-week summer residential program for gifted and talented high school students, integrating academic disciplines, the arts, and unique courses on each of the two campuses. Learning focuses on the exploration of the most recent ideas and concepts in each discipline, and it does not involve credit tests or grades. Students are selected to attend through a competitive and rigorous process after being nominated by their public school unit or public school. This summer, Orange County Schools had 16 students to be accepted to this very prestigious program. Of those, 12 chose to attend. I think I have to have a conversation with the other 4. And tonight we will recognize each student who was able to be present this evening. So at this time, we will call the name of every student selected, even if they did not attend for some reason, because it is such a great honor. to first be nominated and to be chosen to attend speaks volumes on the talents and potential of each student. So every student can be recognized and congratulated for this achievement. I will now call each student's name and state the area in which they were chosen to specialize. So students, when I call your name, if you would please stand to be recognized. All right, so from Cedar Ridge High School, the following students were selected to attend the Governor's School. Sarah Carson, Visual Arts. Lillian Dyslin, Math. Sarah Fenwick, English. Lauren Henderson, Visual Arts. Eden Lejean, Instrumental Music. Brogan O'Connor, selected for Choral Music. Micaiah Owen, Theater. Cypress Proctor, Instrumental Music. Carter Thole, Spanish. Okay, well, let's give them a round of applause. And there's more. So, and from Orange High School, we want to recognize the following students. Margaret Hales for Natural Science. Great. Calvin Jones for Instrumental Music. Isabel Jones for Social Science. All right. Gabrielle Leonard, Spanish. Isabel Lynn, Instrumental Music. Harper Thorst for Instrumental Music. And Fenley White, Instrumental Music. All right, well, let's give our Orange High School students a round of applause. Hey. All right, so next month will mark the start of the nomination season for staff to hold interest meetings with students and their families. And thank you for the families who've joined our students tonight who might be interested in attending the North Carolina Governor's School for 2023. So interested students should contact a school official, such as a school counselor, AIG specialist, to inquire about local processes for nominations to participate in this extraordinary program. Let's give the students, please stand again, another round of applause. Okay. All right, so exciting. All right, so next we'd like to recognize Miss Jones. So we want to not only recognize her, we want to thank Miss Jones for her service and dedication to the learning journeys of students in Orange County schools who have hearing impairments. The impact you make, Ms. Jones, on every child you serve is beyond measure, and we are thankful to have you serving Orange County schools families. So attending tonight with Ms. Jones. Ms. Jones, are you here? There she is. Please stand, Ms. Jones. I understand your mom is with you, Ms. Craddock, and so let's give them a round of applause. So in our district, there are many students with hearing impairments, and we are probably not even aware of all the students who actually struggle with this. So here's what to do if you suspect a hearing loss in a student or yourself. First, contact your school speech language pathologist. He or she can conduct a non-evasive hearing screening. And if a student or staff member does not pass the initial screening, it is very important to follow up with a primary care provider for an evaluation. So again, thank you so much, Ms. Jones, for what you do for this population of students. We appreciate you and your dedication and service. So thank you again. And at this time, I would like to invite our Executive Director of Exceptional Children in Pre-K, Ms. Connie Crimmins, who would like to say a few words about Ms. Jones. Come on down, Ms. Connie Crimmins.
Good evening, board. Good evening, Dr. Felder, community, and especially to Mrs. Beverly Jones. I've known Beverly, I think, since I stepped foot here in Orange County Schools 11 years ago, a long time ago. Beverly is the consummate professional. She moves students. When I say move students, we have to remember that these are students who have profound hearing loss, mild hearing loss. And to be able to do what she does and able with accommodations, with preferential seating, but all of these subtle things you do for a student with a hearing impairment, Beverly understands and immediately addresses the need and makes sure that our students with deafness, hard of hearing are taken care of. So Ms. Jones, thank you for your service to Orange County Schools, and thank you for all you do for the students each and every day.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. My students that I serve in our district, we have 31 who have IEPs. We have many, many more who have a 5 and 4 plan or who are just acing their school career and we don't even know that they have a hearing loss. We have some who started with an IEP and through teaching, self-advocacy skills, they have just managed to soar and have exited and no longer need an IEP. And I'm so proud of each and every one of them. It is a blessing to get to follow them from age 3 when they enter with preschool services until they graduate. And each family is such a special gift. And I appreciate you sharing your children with me. Thank you.
Wonderful. So in addition to this month being Deaf and Hard of Hearing Month, this month is also Attendance Awareness Month. Who knew? Well, every September is Attendance Awareness Month, and it takes place to spread awareness of the fact that maintaining good attendance in school and college is essential for academic success. Apart from the fact that missing classes can place a student behind in their coursework, absenteeism also affects assignments and final exams. So attendanceworks.org is the organization that strives to reduce chronic absenteeism among students of all grade levels by offering research-based strategies to educators on reducing absences in classrooms. So here's why it matters. Before the pandemic, more than 8 million students nationwide were missing so many days of school that they were academically at risk. Today, chronic absence has more than doubled. Chronic absence is missing 10% or more of days of schools due to absence for any reason, whether it is excused, unexcused, or a suspension. What we also know from research is that chronic absenteeism can cause students to have difficulty learning to read by 3rd grade. And we know the impact of not being able to read by 3rd grade has. So to endure hurdles to achieving in middle school and even cause barriers to graduating from high school. Next slide, please. So we recently learned that the Student Support Services team at AL Stanback, so if you were wondering why Dr. Rockland is here tonight, well, this is why. Because we understand that the Student Support Services team at his school has developed a unique way to promote and reward perfect attendance, not just this month, but every week this month. So each week, students with perfect attendance are entered into a random lottery for some fantastic donated prizes from local businesses close by. Each Friday, the team spins a wheel, what fun, to randomly select one student from each grade level to receive a prize. The following Monday, the winners are announced as part of Principal Rockland's morning message, and they collect their prizes to celebrate. So far, gift cards have been donated from Witt's Frozen Custard of Hillsborough, Flyleaf Books in Chapel Hill, and the Orange County Sportsplex for a day of free ice skating. Wow. So pictured here are the winners from Monday, September 19th. And do they look happy? So students must be engaged to learn. So the support team at A.L. Stanback Middle School used September to set the bar very high for student attendance. Mr. Jackson, Ms. McKinney, and Ms. Oaks made up this terrific trio whose efforts around student attendance will continue well into the school year. So see, it's not just for September, it's every month of the year. So Mr. Jackson said the class prizes will be awarded at the end of each quarter to those classes who have the highest attendance rates for that time period. So Dr. Rockland is here tonight, and at this time, I would like to give him an opportunity to enlighten us further about this endeavor at his school. So Dr. Rockland, come on down.
Thank you, Dr. Felder. Board, if it's one thing I've learned from the pandemic, it's that being in our buildings matter. And now that we're back in the building, I can't tell you what a joy it is each and every day to the noise, the excitement in the building. It just makes it so much more fulfilling coming to work every day. Having our kids there makes all the difference in the world. And so the work that our school support team has done, especially under the direction of Mr. Jackson, has been outstanding on trying to promote attendance. Truly appreciate the work that they've done on trying to teach our kids that coming into school is important, and then hopefully the work that we're doing instructionally matters to them in their future. So we're continuing this process. We'll continue it throughout the year, but thank you so much for the support with that, and to our business partners that have helped with that as well. Cannot say thank you enough for just supporting our schools.
Great job. All right, thank you, Dr. Rockland. Well, a couple of more recognitions. So tonight we want to also acknowledge that Orange County Schools has been abundantly blessed with support from several community entities which have encouraged donations of school supplies to benefit the students of Orange County Schools. The Staples Store on Franklin Street in Chapel Hill regularly contributes pre-packaged school supply kits that contain some very essential items which are available for purchase at every register upon checkout. UNC Hospitals has supported Orange County Schools with its annual Stuff the Bus supply drive for 12 years now. Employees, and so you see the bus in the picture there, employees and visitors are all UNC Hospital and UNC Health facilities donate enough supplies to benefit 6 counties, wow, in the Triangle area. And most recently, members of the local branches of the State Employees Credit Union gave generously in their supply drive, which they do every year. So we are so grateful for the generosity of the people in our community who care about our children so much. We thank them all for helping our kids start this school year with everything they need to succeed in school. So round of applause to our partners. All right. Well, if you're wondering why Mr. Albert is here tonight, Mr. Albert, come on down, and Mr. Arbley, and who's coming with you? You guys, come on down, team. So for the second year in the row, staff from nearly every central services department, including Franklin, Franklin, you should be up there, spent their mornings providing phone support for Orange County Schools transportation staff and our families whose children ride school buses. So for the first 2 weeks of school, that's right, 2 weeks, the call center was open from 7 to 11, and more than 20 different district staff, so this is just a small percentage of the staff who participated, helped field calls for families at various times. Over this 2 weeks, a total of 456 calls were logged by the call center teams. At this time, we want to thank everyone, including our technology team, for setting up the phone lines daily, the transportation team for keeping information updated. Having the call center allows for transportation staff to focus on adjusting routes, updating driver route sheets, and making necessary route modifications to best serve students and families. So at this time, I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Aberle and to Mr. Albert, our Director for Transportation, to share a few words before you get your big round of applause.
Thank you, Dr. Felder, members of the board and public. Again, this is a service to our schools and to our families. First and foremost, the concept for the call center was derived out of a need. We know and our families experience changes to bus routes that can already have anxiety attached to it, but trying to get information quickly and making sure that no child was at a bus stop that parents didn't have information about, and making sure that we had routes updated and current information back out to our families if we had substitute buses that took place. And so there was a host of activities that were taking place in order to field those calls. And you can imagine with 2 people in our transportation department that handle routing and just a few administrative staff trying to answer 456 phone calls and get back to folks in a timely manner would be very difficult, and the work wouldn't be accomplished because they would be trying to respond. And so really by separating the work to field the calls coming in and being able to quickly get answers to families allowed them to do what they do best, which is making sure the routes are running smoothly and being coordinated and getting students to school on time. And we talked about, the launch of the year being successful. Certainly there's areas we can improve on, but having the call center and having the dedication of all the individuals who work the call center and all the departments and individuals who gave up their staff time to spend with us was very worthwhile. We certainly will continue this. This will be something that will be implemented in future years as well. And we'll continue to build upon the processes so that we are there and available for our families. And just wanted to say again, thank you for the support, and thank you to our parents allowing us the opportunity to serve you. Mr. Albert?
Thank you. And I'll try to make this short and sweet. Good evening, board, Dr. Felder. Thank you, Mr. Aberle. I mean, first and foremost, this is the second year that this call center has been utilized. First year was good. The second year was great. Like he said, this is precious time in the mornings and afternoons that the department can focus on putting 600 students on routes in the first 2 weeks. We could never have even come close to doing that without having that precious time that the call center gave us. So this call center was composed of just awesome individuals around the district. These 2 right here I think they might have missed their calling because you should hear them on the phone when they answer the phone. I mean, it was just like, who is that guy? Who is this lady? They made it fun, and they also did a great job. The parents, the feedback that once the call center ended, and we would still be following up on situations, they spoke very highly of the individuals that were answering the phone. So thank you to everybody that helped out in the call center. I'm still not sure who did it. Did you do the pizza party? You did? So Mr. Aberle had a pizza party for all the individuals that helped, but they all didn't show up. We're all busy, shocker. But I tried to get over there so that I could thank everybody, individually. So maybe this will get out there far enough and everybody will hear it. But thank you so much to all the help and time that was dedicated for it, because it really, really made a difference. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, well, that concludes the recognitions for this evening.
All right, thank you, Dr. Felder.
Sure.
With that, the next item we have is the agenda adoption, and I do know that one item that's been asked to move to the next agenda to align with the attrition data and the board priorities, which is the teachers' working survey, will be moved if it so passes tonight. So do we have an agenda adoption with pulling the teacher working survey from the agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, motion is second. All in favor? Aye. All right, motion carries. Next we have is our public comments. The Board of Education welcomes public comments. Public comments are governed by the board policy on public participation at board meetings, specifically policy 2310 and the North Carolina General Assembly Statute 143 through 318.17. A person wishing to address the board must sign up prior to the board's meeting. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. When the 3 minutes ends, the speaker must stop speaking immediately. Yielding time to another speaker will not be permitted. Public comment should not address any specific confidential student or personnel matter. If you wish to address a matter that may require identifying either a student or an employee, please first direct your inquiry to the superintendent for assistance on the process to address your concern. Who do we have first?
First up is David Ogden.
Good evening, Chair Atherton and fellow board members. As you know, there are many parents in our district that are concerned about policies that affect their children, and I'm definitely one of those parents. Today, I'd like to address a specific concern, which is the way that our district leaders, and in particular the previous school board, consistently, intentionally, and systematically work to impede communication by citizens. I'd like to take a forward-looking approach to this concern and propose 4 simple asks from this board. Number 1, please listen when we speak in board meetings. I realize there's a little irony here, since I hope you're listening right now. But for years, I've been watching board meetings and attending them, and I've seen that citizens making comments were ignored and disrespected and otherwise belittled. Today, I'm asking, please consider listening to your constituents in a way that is meaningful. Number 2, when you can, please respond. I realize this is not a collaborative meeting with a back and forth conversation, and I don't expect you to respond in this meeting. I hope you can respond within a week or 2 or a month at the most. It could be in the form of a short email to whoever made a comment, or maybe a short agenda item to acknowledge that you've heard your citizens. Number 3, please include all written and verbal comments in the official record. This is the policy of the Board of Commissioners and of many boards where interaction is encouraged from the community. I strongly urge you to bring this idea up for consideration. It's yet another very simple way to acknowledge those who take the time to express their concerns. And number 4, please do not hold meetings in spaces that are too small for the community to participate. There are many safe and available venues in our county where meetings could be held that would not force you to have your constituents to remain outside of what should be a public hearing. I believe that these 4 actions can have a profound effect on the way your constituents feel about you, this board, and each of your leadership. I appreciate your consideration, and I look forward to hearing back from you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gretchen Smith.
Good evening, Chair and Board and Superintendent all. Thank you for some procedures that have been adjusted over, I think, June, July, over the summer, as far as like the process for signing up. That seems more accessible to speak for anybody who might be busy in their day and just showing up. It seems a little bit easier. I wanted to share some thoughts. Like were mentioned before, there's things that have been not setting well over the last couple of years in the district. The children are our trust for the future, and we have all things to show the integral and central place for the parents and the family in the child's life. For parents, over the last few years in the school district, trust for the schools and some teachers, some administrators, has been broken. Too often, parents are finding out after the fact that their own tax dollars paid for the presentation of content to their own child of ideas that are, for one, on the list of protected topics per this board's policy on survey content, and two, would be considered adult content either by community rating systems or in our public library shelves in adult spaces. Parents have asked for the curriculum to be seen, that they will be presented ahead of their child's time in a class to do their own due diligence, given this pattern that has been happening before mentioned. These requests have most often been received with or a directive to submit a public request of records. I'll say that a different way. Parents are asking to learn and understand ahead of time to see what the offering will be that their tax dollars are paying for, and those requests are being pushed away, ignored, or told to make a legal request for those things. This pattern is a major piece of the distrust currently living among the community members, grandparents, and otherwise. In any type of relationship, when trust has been damaged, there are tested and affirmed practices for healing such a relationship. Those would be transparency, accountability, and collaboration. Across this state and in districts across the nation, there are some instances of efforts being made on this idea of transparency. Moms for Liberty Orange County is requesting for all curriculum from early childhood to 12th grade be posted online, easily and accessible for anyone in the community to study and look over. Videos, books, anything that will be used in curriculum. This is a request that will open a window for transparency. When items are found here and there and questions are not being answered, we are all left to fill in the blanks around these concerning ideas and materials that are coming out in tidbits. This is most likely a large undertaking, and collaboration was the other important part in healing this relationship. We're not just asking for work to be done. We're willing to come around as a community and put in whatever efforts to relieve teachers' time, to do whatever needs to be done to be able to make this happen in the district, because we know everyone's time is very valuable. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes public comment tonight. The next item is our consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the modified personnel report?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we've got a motion with the second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Okay, first up for discussion action, the Child Nutrition Services.
Good evening. I have with me Sarah Pitts, our Director of Child Nutrition, who will talk about the pizza bid that has come in and our request for the contract for services. Thank you.
Good evening, Board Chair, members of the board, Dr. Felder, staff, and community. Tonight, I get to present the Orange County Schools branded pizza bid for approval. Mr. Atherton, last board meeting, you quoted an article from the News of Orange, right, where a community member said, healthy food is the most important back-to-school supply, right? And they're right. Now, not only is healthy food that tastes good important, but it's also important that it's what our students want to eat, right? Because if it's healthy and they won't eat it, it doesn't do us any good. So last year, our superintendent, Dr. Felder, spent time with our students asking them about their school experience, everything from safety to instruction to child nutrition services. And what the students said is they would like more opportunities to eat the food that they eat when they're outside of school, right? They want pizza, they want Subway, they want the things that they're used to eating. Now, the trick is, right, to take what they want and blend it with a healthy option. So that's what we're going to try to do. So in the past, Child Nutrition had a contract for branded commercial pizza. I believe it stopped in the school year 1920 due to safety protocol for COVID. So Child Nutrition Services would like to bring that option back to allow a contract for branded commercial pizza to be in with our students. The contract would allow for middle school students to have an option to purchase branded pizza as a second entree once a week. High school students would have the option to make this a specialty item and be able to purchase it up to 2 times a week. Orange County schools received bids. We took all the nutritional value, sent it to our contracted registered dietitian, right, to make sure that all the ingredients and everything complied with the requirements for a reimbursable meal under the school nutrition program. So tonight, the superintendent recommends to the board approve a contract with Tasty Pizza, Pizza Hut LLC, for the option of the 22-23 school year and an option of 4 additional annual renewals after that. Are there any questions?
Thank you. I know the kids will be excited about this. I wanted to check that partnership will have the high school volume of options.
Yes.
And not the, great. Okay.
Yes, so we have it set up to where the middle school and high school get on the same day, and then ALS would also get it for the high school on the one day that the high school has the option. So yes, it's set up in the contract to offer it that way.
Great, thank you.
Sarah?
And I know that in the past, the elementary schools also had, they used to be Domino's. So why aren't we doing the elementary school too?
Well, we had a conversation with our elementary managers and some of the elementary students, and it just seemed that they kind of grew tired of that option, and they're really liking the option now of having the high school pizza, right? So we're throwing in the different types of high school pizza that we have in the contract, and we're offering that to our students. Some elementaries on Fridays as a specialty item. So it, honestly, talking to our elementary students, they just like the 4x6. It tends to be a bigger sell. So that's why we went with that option for the elementary.
Okay. This is why we don't go off of just like my children's opinions about whether they want to order the item. So, okay, perfect.
So I guess one question I had is students' accessibility to this. So I know we've had in the past families that can't afford the food. Are there going to be programs that people can apply for so they can get access, or?
So this would be considered an entree as part of the meal. So if students are approved for the free or reduced meal option, this could be their entree as part of those meal options. So yes, everyone will have access.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions?
Motion to approve?
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you all.
Thank you for your time.
All right, next, let's see, we have the River Park School Mechanical and Facility Renovation Phase 2 change order approval.
Yes, thank you, Chair Atherton. So this evening, I'm presenting on behalf of our Facilities and Maintenance Department a change order request. As you know, we've been in a multi-phase 2-year project at River Park Elementary School. We've completed the majority of the Phase 2 work at the school. That included mechanical work, upgrades on the lower hallways, inside renovations, lights, and other facility improvements. Continued work will happen on this project through the fall, which includes outside exterior renovations and windows to the lower hallway. We did run into some change orders, and we're bringing this before you this evening for the board to approve the change orders to date. The original contract amount was $1.946 million. There was a change order 1 for $3,266, and change order 2 and 3 we're presenting this evening. We had a contingency in the project for $97,300 that was previously approved by the board in February, and that brings us a balance for this change order of $22,539.22. The changes were a result of media center renovations with 2 new small conference rooms being added. We secured the technology equipment room, and then as part of the upgrades, we also added a new ADA compliant bathroom with the changing area as part of the new nurse's office on the school to meet student needs on the campus, some plumbing changes and concrete changes. And then change order 3, we had emergency work to clean up the building and get the students or the teachers back in their classrooms and the students' classrooms ready for the first day of school. So we had to bring in additional contract services on nights and weekends in order to prepare the campus as we were right up against the opening of schools this year. And so this would bring our request this evening for $22,539 as the balance of the change order. And that would move our contract amount not to exceed $2,065,848.06, including the $97,000 that was previously approved. We would anticipate, as we're doing the exterior renovations, there may be an additional change order, but we would have that for you once that work's completed as we start the exterior renovations. Questions or comments about this project and the change order that we're requesting this evening?
Bonnie?
I'm just a little curious about when this project's going to be done.
So right now, we're still waiting on some of the windows and the exterior components to come in. Once those are on site, then we'll start scheduling with the contractor. And my understanding is that would be completed prior to the fall semester ending in December. The mobilization would be October, November, and we hope to have all work completed for this phase by the end of December.
By the end of this December? And is
This
there
December
is there
for
a
this
phase?
project.
Is there a phase that follows?
No, this would complete the mechanical system upgrades. It's an older school, some additional renovations that this would take place on this campus. You could call it a phase 3 or just the next step of renovating the older buildings. We have several of our schools designated for plumbing and restroom facility upgrades going into the next fiscal year. And this campus is in need. We did the one restroom for ADA compliance, but there's not been any major renovations to restrooms on the campus or additional restrooms with the number of staff that are there compared when the building was first built 70 years ago. So we do anticipate restroom renovations, but we'll bring that project back to the board for approval. We have several campuses, Orange High School, Eflin Cheeks Elementary School, that are in need of restroom renovations as well. And we're going to package all of those schools together for the bids.
Sarah?
This isn't a question, it's just this like minor cosmetic thing that I want to make sure that you're aware of, which is on the outside facing St. Mary's Road, one of the walls has been painted like an aqua color, and there's like a little section of it that's like not the same color. This is not as important as like plumbing or like the essential stuff, but every time I think about how we've talked about like, you know, physically making the campus more beautiful, and you kind of have this issue of what side of it is sort of facing the road is like the mechanicals and all that stuff. But yeah, I didn't know if that was going to get finished painting or something.
I don't know, but I can promise
It's
you
like
that,
so minor, but
there'll be
as
a
long as we're
deputy
talking
superintendent
about
on the campus tomorrow reviewing that.
it. It's not urgent, just mentioning it. Thank you.
So I just had one question. I know during the renovation, there was a issue in the sink of the media center. Do you know if that's been resolved and it's functional now?
Yeah, that should have been part of the plumbing issues with that line over there that had been an issue for some time. So that should have been completed as part of this project.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, do we have a motion to approve?
Move the recommendation.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Next, we have the additional teacher duty stipend when providing instructional during a planning period. That's a lot to say.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Good evening. When we presented our budget to you for approval at our last board meeting, it was asked about the additional stipend that was being provided to our certified personnel when we were in the COVID pandemic, about continuing that. And you asked for a recommendation to be looked at and to be brought back to you. So I am here this evening to bring a recommendation. As we talked about at our last meeting, we had ceased the previous operations for a host of various reasons, which were all centered around the COVID pandemic, the end of the state of emergency, the change in the quarantine requirements, and also the fact that we have expended all of our ESSER 1 and all of our ESSER 2 dollars. We are now remaining just with our ESSER 3 bucket of funds. If you also recall, there is a pretty detailed plan for the expending of those funds, and in order to be able to continue forward with that plan, as well as to not hit our local budget for the additional cost that was associated with the stipend, we elected to discontinue it. So in reviewing and talking with principals and other staff, we have a recommendation and a potential funding source. So just a few communication or clarity issues surrounding this. This recommendation we would ask that it not be a first go-to for our school building administrators, that they utilize the other sources that we have made available to them with their long-term subs and their daily subs and the other additional people that have been placed in their building. Our teachers have asked us to protect their planning periods. They have shared with us that that is very valuable time for them and for us to do what we can to protect that for them. So we want to do that. So the recommendation would be a $40 per day stipend for certified staff who teach during a planning period. The recommendation would be that it would be one stipend per teacher per day. So there are cases in certain situations across the district where certain staff may have more than one planning period. To protect planning periods, as we have been asked to do, we would like to require that this only be available for one period per teacher per day. So we would also like to ask that we relook this in November, that this just be a something that we begin now through November the 30th. And the reason that I ask that is because of funding, as well as we're continuing to recruit and we're continuing to hire. So to fund this, I would like to recommend that we look at using the lapsed salaries of the 16 classroom core positions that we have had to this point in time. That equates to roughly 1.5 positions for 10 months. So if we utilize these funds for that, sustainability, of course, is going to depend upon the vacancies that continue in the district. And again, that is another reason that I would request that we do relook it. And we want to honor our teachers, honor what they're giving up, what they're helping us with, but we also want to do what we can to protect their time, to be able to plan and to have that time. Is there any questions?
Carrie?
Thank you, Ms. Rath, for bringing this recommendation forward. So my main question has to do with consistency. Like I know different schools have had different situations, so they've had to have coverage from different teachers. And I know we've seen in some personnel reports, some buildings have had like temporary terminating contracts for teachers regularly covering planning periods. But like if for teachers who maybe have been covering and haven't been getting paid extra to date, does this something they can go back and get paid for? Is it just start now? And is it on like the teacher to identify when they're covering a planning period and getting paid? Or is it, how do we know that it's happening kind of consistently building to building?
Great question. So my recommendation would be that we employ this avenue versus the temporary terminating contract. When we were looking at this before, when we were ceasing our recommendation to no longer provide this, the temporary terminating contract is an avenue, and the intent was for those long-term absences. For example, if a teacher is out on a medical leave or maternity leave or other reasons where it's going to be a long-term absence that we're aware of, that was the avenue to utilize the temporary terminating contract so that we can ensure that if a teacher is being asked to consistently every day plan, grade, and provide instruction for a classroom, that we wanted to make sure that they received additional compensation for that. My recommendation would be that this start now, only because we did not, when we were doing this before, during the COVID time period, we had a process in place where we worked with the schools and with the school bookkeepers, where when a teacher was pulled to teach during their planning period, there was an audit trail where we could be able to identify them and have that audit trail in our payroll system. And it was provided to payroll at each payroll cycle so that we could ensure that they received those stipends. I understand the desire to go backwards. I'm not going to say it's impossible. It would be challenging. And my recommendation would be that we start it now going forward through November the 30th. And various reasons also funding.
Thank you.
Other questions? Sarah?
I'm just wondering if there's any piece in this, in the school decision-making about coverage. I'm thinking about situations where, you know, we know a teacher is going to be out for a week, maybe COVID or whatever. Are schools trying to get consistent, you know, the same teacher to cover all week? Or I could sort of imagine situations of like, everyone take a day, and that might be not as good for student learning as sort of a consistent person across the week.
I'll let you.
So what you just described is the ideal, but unfortunately the ideal doesn't always pan out. And so there's something certainly to be said for consistency, but sometimes just because of other dynamics and situations going on in a school, that's not possible. So sometimes it's a series of people staff who are supporting a classroom in the absence of a teacher. Yeah, that's, again, not something that would be the first choice, but sometimes that does happen. Mm-hmm.
Very complex. Yep, Ms. Rath, thank you for bringing this forward and thinking creatively about funding sources too.
Bonnie?
Yeah, I also want to thank you for this, and I love the idea of funding with lapsed salary. It's very creative. Thank you for that. And I'm hearing you loud and clear that we don't want our teachers giving up their planning time in order to teach. So that's clear. And that's an administrative on-the-ground decision. If they have to do it more than once, cover more than one planning period in a day, I think they should be paid for it. And if you see that happening, then I think that's a conversation that you could have with the administrator and the teacher, but I don't want to set a rule here at the board saying we're only going to do one a day. So I'd love to do it. I'd like to make it a little bit more flexible and let you all manage it, because if it's happening more than once, you probably want to know about it. So that I'd rather see that managed rather than a rule. Am I making sense?
No, you are making sense. I'm just wondering how we can do both. I do think we need some guardrails around it. And so certainly, if the situation calls for it, and that's what a school administrator needs to do and can justify that, we can consider it. But I do think we need some guardrails.
I think my intent was to set some type of guardrail where we were protecting those planning periods first and foremost, and that I understand what you're saying, and not, that's an administrator decision, and being the boots on the ground, they need to have the flexibility to do that. But I would just like to, I would like to have a conversation about it beforehand instead of it. I don't want it to become the norm.
Absolutely. So the guardrail is, if I'm hearing you correctly, we don't really want teachers doing this at all. We want teachers doing their planning. So the guardrail is, if they're being reached out to cover classes, you're over the line. We're over the line. What I want to avoid is, if they're over the line, I don't want this to be the teacher's problem. I want it to be management's problem.
Understand.
So that's.
And it can be, it should be.
Yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Other comments? Yeah, and I'll just say, I agree with Ms. Hauser. My concern is if a teacher is put in that position, all of a sudden she's not getting compensated. They are not getting compensated for whatever time they're spending, not because something they did, but the situation they're in. So that's the concerning part to me, is only saying it's once per day. I think there should be some flexibility or an exception process that the school must do to do it, but we don't put it on the teacher that now has to say, okay, I had to do this, I've lost my planning, and I'm not getting compensated. So I would prefer if we add an exception process for anybody that's more than one day, for the schools to reach out, and that way we cover it and it's not on the teachers to be in that situation.
I was just wondering, because I don't know, since I wasn't here last year. You said $40 a day for the teacher to cover that class. Is that what it was last year?
No, ma'am.
What was it last year?
60.
Okay.
And the reason it was higher is because of the ESSER funds that we had available. When we look at the rate of the average of our certified personnel, $40 is higher than across our district what the average is.
Okay.
More so for some than others, but it is higher for everyone.
Okay. I agree it needs to be done. I was just wondering if they were comparable. Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? So would the board be willing to entertain a motion and include this exception process to help?
So move to approve the superintendent's recommendation with the addendum that the staff figure out an exception process for situations where an administration thinks they need to ask somebody to cover more than one planning period.
So, do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, we have the strategic plan update.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Atherton. So in 2019, the district's strategic plan sunsetted. So in the winter of 2020, and if you all will recall, what we were up to our necks in, we were up to our necks in a global pandemic. But knowing that a goal without a plan is just a wish, it was important for the district to move forward despite grappling with a global pandemic, with developing a new strategic plan. So Orange County Schools began an ambitious process to create a new strategic plan that will shape the district over the next 5 years. Next slide, please. So our strategic plan is truly our North Star. It is our roadmap. This slide outlines the incredible journey we've been on that began with our Listen and Learns, pre-COVID Listen and Learns, where we asked what our community's hopes and dreams are for students, what concerns exist, and what our community already loves about our district. We analyzed more than 1,000 comments from families, from students, from staff members. Once we started drafting the strategic plan, we asked for additional input and received hundreds of entries online. Finally, we received feedback from all of you, our school board, from staff, students, families, from across the community. Per the feedback received, our mission, vision, goals, and belief statements were developed, and they were developed with the help of the North Carolina School Board Association, which were also approved by the board. Next, we developed what we are now referring to as goals, formerly known as leading measures, and key performance indicators, formerly known as lagging measures. We developed key strategies and action steps, aligned our school improvement plans to the 4 strategic plan outcome goals, and started sharing the plan with stakeholders. So using the continuous improvement cycle of Plan, Do, Study, Act, last spring, we revisited and revised the plan based on stakeholder feedback and in response to student achievement and other data, such as our teacher working conditions survey data. So tonight, we want to share the revised strategic plan with you. And before I get started, I want to note that not everything in the plan was revised. Some things have stayed the same. Next slide. So this slide shows the components of our strategic plan that have not changed. Our mission, vision, and belief statements remind us every day what it means to learn and work in Orange County schools. Our mission statement explains our purpose, what it is that we do in Orange County schools. The vision statement answers the question, if we achieve our mission, what will Orange County schools look like in the future? The belief statements, well, those are our non-negotiables. Those are our core values, and they help us prioritize and make the work work to make the future we want a reality. So again, these are the components of our strategic plan that were approved by the board that remain unchanged. Our 4 overarching outcome goals noted on this slide that the board also approved also remain unchanged. Again, these 4 goals have not changed. So you may be asking, well, then what changed? Something changed. You guys weren't over there revising, but nothing. So you're right, things have changed. And so what has changed? Largely clarity in language, as requested by stakeholders. So here, using outcome goal 3 as an example, clarity in language that is now present across all 4 of our outcome goals includes answering the following 5 questions for each of the 4 outcome goals. So we got questions like, so what does this outcome goal mean? We are clearly answering that question now for each of the 4 outcome goals. How will Orange County Schools emphasize equity through this outcome goal? We have a response, a clear response for each of the four outcome goals. Another question, how does this outcome goal align to the Orange County Schools equity plan? So we have an equity plan, it's outlined in policy 1030. And so what's the alignment? Each of the four outcome goals are inextricably aligned to the equity plan, and the details of that for each of the goals is provided. The fourth question, what problem is this outcome goal trying to solve? So there are two responses provided. And why is this outcome goal important? And so for each of the outcome goals, these 5 questions, a response is provided. Next slide, and hopefully greater clarity has been brought. And so on this slide, it's also important to know that in addition to answering the 5 questions for each outcome goal, we also revisited the goals themselves to ensure that they are not only SMART goals, meaning they are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound, but as our new Chief Equity Officer pointed out, they need to be SMART-y goals, which means we're ensuring we have goals that are not only specific, not only measurable, not only attainable, relevant, and time-bound, but also inclusive and equitable. So, before our outcome goal team leads provide an update on the 4 revised outcome goals, I'd like to introduce someone who's joining us virtually, and some of you are familiar with, Dr. Sarfo. You met her previously, and so she is the Director of Research for the Council of Great City Schools. The Council of Great City Schools supports and advocates for the nation's 77 largest school districts, which represent approximately 8 million children. A little bit about Dr. Sarfo. She holds years of experience in leading and conducting research and evaluation in educational agencies, focusing on experimental and quasi-experimental research design, improving urban education, as well as issues of race and equity, teacher quality, and school accountability. In her role, she helps guide and develop the work of research directors across the nation's largest urban school districts. Prior to joining the Council of Great City Schools, and most significantly, Dr. Sarfo served as Chief Performance Officer at Guilford County Schools here in North Carolina, which is the 47th largest school district in the country. In this role, she led the Division of Accountability, Research, and Planning, which is responsible for research, evaluation, accountability, and grant activities for the district, as well as local and state assessments, planning, student information, student and school performance, analysis, and reporting. Prior to that, so prior to working in Guilford, Dr. Sarfo worked as a research assistant professor at the Center of Research on Education and Social Policy at the University of Delaware, and as a Harvard Strategic Data Project Fellow. She received her PhD in Education Evaluation, Measurement, and Statistics from the University of Delaware, and is an AERA Dissertation Fellow. Yes, she is the real deal, and we are very, very grateful and fortunate to work with her. So at this time, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Sarfo, as she had an opportunity to review the revisions to our strategic plan and provide feedback that informed what you will hear tonight. So without further ado, Dr. Sarfo.
Thank you. Can you hear me? It appears I can't show my video.
We can hear you.
But hopefully, okay, great. All right, so good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Felder, for the introduction. A pleasure to be with you all this evening, and great to hear all of the successes going on in Orange County Schools. Again, I did a review of the current or the previous strategic plan goals and KPIs, and just brought my lens to the work to refine it a bit and to provide some recommendations for changes. If you could, thank you. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. So just to set the conversation in terms of how I view the identifying and the plan, identifying and setting strategic goals. Ideally, your strategic goals should be quantifiable. They should use metrics that align to the vision of the district and the community for student success. Ideally, your strategic vision should have 1 to 3 associated strategic goals. Each goal should have several KPIs associated and aligned to those goals. Goals should be measurable with the ability to track outcomes over time. Setting strategic goals and KPIs require deep analysis of system and school data. They require an alignment between instructional and curricular investments. And then ideally, of course, you heard that I work with an equity lens. I believe your strategic goals should be designed to address gaps in your district program and outcomes and drive overall improvements across the district. In terms of setting targets for your strategic goals and KPIs, you want to start with identifying your baseline. So it answers the question, where are your students currently at on each measure? And then you want to set an overall target. You have a 5-year strategic plan here. So where do you plan for your students to be in 5 years? How does student performance and growth compare to other students in comparable jurisdictions? And what is the average annual growth of the group on each measure? So that's how you decide your overall goal, is by looking at the students in comparable districts, as well as average annual growth on the group that you're trying to measure. And then you'll need to set the annual incremental targets every year based on what that average annual growth looks like. A lot of what you see in terms of recommendations I've made is related to language and how we talk about strategic goals. They should be in a format similar to this, where you are, which includes a quantitative measure that can be tracked over time, a group of area or focus, a baseline or a starting point, a target or ending point, and an end time of year. So an example would be increase a particular measure for a particular group of students from 50% to 100% by 2026. That's an example of how I believe strategic goals should be written. KPIs, of course, should align to your goals. They are a set of targets that track outputs of program efforts. They ideally are demonstrated progress on your KPIs will drive change and progress towards meeting your strategic goals. Feel free to reevaluate, adjust the KPIs when necessary, when your metrics change, when terms expire, or when the goal is met. And KPIs are generally used in conversations like these with your board members and community stakeholders to make sure that the progress towards your overall goals are being met. Lastly, addressing inequities. So again, your strategic goals and KPIs should focus on groups of students to drive focus on improving their performance and experiences in reducing gaps. So it requires you to answer questions like, where do gaps exist between student groups? Which student groups have the most room for improvement? And which student groups are not moving? So I focused my review of the strategic plan. While I looked at it holistically, I also focused in on measurement, alignment, and language and presentation of your strategic goals. So far, so good. I know the hard work of strategic planning in school districts. You all have taken a considerable amount of time and effort and thought to really produce a sound strategic plan. So I commend you all for the time and investment that you put into the development of your strategic plan. I found that there was great alignment between your KPIs and goals your goals to your strategic vision. There's some established, some measurable goals and KPIs. You've considered interim goals and targets within those as within your strategic goals. There's alignment to your district's equity plan. I have not seen a lot of that in the districts I work with. So I commend you all for thinking about making some alignment with your equity plan. There's a focus on inequities and student performance, and there's a plan to communicate progress to your stakeholders. So far, so good. My recommendations as it relates to measurement was mostly kind of work you were already doing, but just want to put a stronger emphasis on just making sure that you're focused in on the most critical levers of change and have the KPIs drive the work towards that change. So making sure there's that connection there, ensuring that the instructional, curricular, and programmatic investments of Orange County schools are in place to drive improvements in both your strategic goal performance and KPIs. Again, to rewrite the goals, some of them were written the right way, but just write them in a format that is more measurable and is clearer in the format that I've provided. Include measures that are quantifiable and can be tracked over time. Don't combine multiple or unrelated measures into one goal or KPI. So simplifying the goals to include only one measure within each goal. That gives you some ability to track it over time if you isolate them that way. And then ensuring that interim goals are incremental and based on average annual growth on each measure. Again, some of this you guys are already doing. I just put some stronger emphasis on it as I provided recommendations. In terms of alignment, great alignment already. My recommendations were just to review them again, review the alignment of the KPIs to strategic goal, remove KPIs in some cases where there was a little to no alignment. So you'll see that I have made some recommendations in those places or in places where other KPIs were more aligned. And then adding KPIs to include more specificity on targeting inequities in order to drive overall change and reduce gaps. And you'll definitely see some of that as the group shares their updates. And then lastly, in terms of language and presentation, just using clear, succinct, and simple language when communicating goals, targets, KPIs. We want to make sure that the community understands where Orange County Schools is going in terms of their strategic plan. And then recommendation to just remove the language around leading and lagging goals. It's not typically understandable among lay audiences. So those were the recommendations that I made. And I'm happy to answer any questions later after the updates are presented. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Sarfo, and thank you for your willingness to hang on and be available for questions. And so first up, I would like to invite Dr. Denise Green. Dr. Green is one of the outcome goal team leads for the district. And so Dr. Green will walk us through the revisions to Outcome Goal 1, Teaching Tomorrow's Leaders.
Well, good evening, Board Chair Atherton, Vice Chair Purcell, board members, and Superintendent Felder. Pleased to present to you our goal number 1 this evening. If you recall, last time I was before the board, I shared with you our school system data. And with that, we were able to acknowledge and celebrate some good points about the data, as well as point out and identify some areas for growth. And so as we look at our school improvement plan, it gives us an opportunity to address what are the areas that we do need to focus on in order to indeed address tomorrow's leaders. So with that, as well as looking at the suggestions from Dr. Sarfo, goal team number 1 identified 3 major goals. Before we get to our goals, I want to point out the 5 questions that Dr. Felder identified that we want to address. Again, what does this outcome goal mean? We talked about a while back our MTSS, a multi-tiered system of support. And with that, it speaks to what are the systems, what are the structures, what's in place to address all students. And so when we talk about our goals, we're looking at what is it that we are focused on that benefits all of our students while we put in place support structures for students who are not achieving at the rate that we want to, as well as what we put in place for students who are at the high end. So looking at acceleration as well as indeed filling in the gaps. How will OCS emphasize equity through this outcome goal? We look at it through our curriculum. We look at it through our resources. We look at it through building high quality instruction. We look at the resources, how we are indeed supporting students at all levels. How does the outcome goal align to the equity plan? Here, you will see in our goals where we have indeed differentiated our data. We have goals to address students at different levels, not only looking at it through the equity lens of race, looking at it through the equity lens of student services, but also looking at it through the equity lens of different achievement levels. What problem is this outcome goal addressing? One, it's looking at student achievement, increasing our student achievement through meeting proficiency as well as growth. It's also looking at decreasing the achievement gap here, as well as increasing graduation rate for our students and building staff capacity through high quality research-based curricula and professional development. What is this outcome? Why is this outcome goal important? I don't have to tell you that. It's extremely important. It is about our youth. It is about tomorrow's leaders. It is about not only how well we are teaching our youth, but it's also about how we are building capacity of our leaders, our teachers. It impacts all the other goals that we talk about and the work that we do in our school system. So with that, I want to speak to our 3 goals. Dr. Sarfo said, we need to reduce and make sure that we are aligned and that we are focused around the important things. So we did reduce from our 5 goals down to 3, but we embedded our goals you will see in some of our KPIs. So goal 1, increase the percentage of OCS students demonstrating grade level proficiency. Under that, you will see on reading, end of grade EOG in grades 3 through 8 from 42 9/10% to 80%, and in math, EOGs in grades 3 through 8 from 45 9/10 to 80%, and the grade level proficiency among students in English 2 and end of content from 60 3/10% to 80%, and grade level proficiency among students on Math 1 end of course from 31 7/10% to 80%, and grade level proficiency among students on Math 3 end of course from 60 3/10% to 80%. Goal 1.2 is increase the percentage of schools meeting or exceeding growth from 83% to 100% by 2026. And our third goal, increase the graduation rate from 90.2% to a minimum of 92% by 2026. You will see we have some stretch goals in our goals because we believe our students can do it. We believe our teachers can do it. And we believe we have the resources and materials to meet this goal. Now, with that, we have some measures. Our key performance areas you will see align with our goals. So we have broken them down into many different areas to focus on. So within each goal, you will see a breakdown of the measures that we will monitor each year and present the data. So in goal 1.1 and in 1.2, where we're increasing the percentage of Orange County students demonstrating grade level proficiency and the percentage of students meeting and exceeding growth, you will see here the breakdown of the KPIs in increasing reading and math, the grade level proficiency among students in grades 3 through 8, and the breakdown among our Black students, Hispanic students, our students, economically disadvantaged students, our English language, and our students with disability. And so you will see that breakdown with each of our goals here. When you look at the goal focus on English, end of English 2, end of course, Math 1, end of course, as well as Math 3, end of course, you will also see the KPIs break down there by our different groups. So you will see the focus there with our equity, focus there with different achievement, and the focus on indeed closing the achievement gap and ensuring that we are meeting the needs of our students, of all our students. Dr. Felder, do you want me to bring up the second group at this time or pause for any questions?
Let's bring up the second group. Would that be okay? And have each group present and then save all questions to the end? Thank you. And Board, I'm giving you access to the deck so that you can send out.
So at this time, I invite the co-leads for goal number 2.
That would be Ms. Rhonda Rath, Chief Finance Officer, and Mr. Patrick Abley, Deputy Superintendent.
All right, so we're here to present Goal 2, and just want to talk through, the importance of making sure we have excellence and efficiency in all we do. Although we represent 2 of the operation and auxiliary service, financial service areas, it's important that we think about efficiency throughout the organization. And as you see, what we want to talk about is how we're providing safe environments that are both physically safe and socially, emotionally safe for our students. And that's a key difference in this goal. And one of the changes that was made was thinking about school safety, not just from a physical standpoint, but how we develop relationships and how we address social and emotional health is critical to the excellence that we provide. When we look at the alignment to the equity plan, again, making sure that our decisions, the rationale, the inputs, and the communication that happens is involving all of our stakeholders. As Sarah mentioned earlier with pizza, how do you know what they like? You talk to them. How do we know we're developing positive relationships with students and we're meeting our equity goals? We survey, we have conversations, we review data, but we make sure what we're doing is aligned. And we're proud to have an equity plan and making sure that we're aligned to that with the decisions that are being made. And again, the problem is simplistic, but it's also complex. Protecting all the individuals on our campuses, but making sure there's continuity not only of operational process and procedures, which keep schools safe, but also continuity of knowledge and how we're keeping plans, how we're keeping processes and procedures in repositories and in locations, so that as there's changeover or turnover within the district, we just don't start anew every time someone comes in the door. We have to make sure that the expectations, the protocol, the procedures, the policies are followed, but there's also a guide that helps with that, with our regulations. And so that's a goal that we wanted to achieve as well. And so 3 main goals we wanted to discuss and present on this evening. One is goal 1, increase teacher satisfaction ratings on school safety. The teacher working condition survey, although was somewhat positive at 79%, it's not good enough. And I know our esteemed colleagues and our consultant has recommended, we think about incremental steps and we use 2 to 3 percentage points per year in order to achieve those goals. I can't stand before you and say that we don't have a leap we need to make, and we need to make it quickly. And so our goal is to go from 79% to 90%. We need to understand what it is that's on folks' minds and why they feel that we're at 79% when it comes to school safety. We want to increase with goal 2 the number of professional development hours that our school leaders have on school safety, and that's not physical safety, that's also mental health and how we're reaching students and staff members to develop those relationships, because it's important that we have positive relationships on our campuses. And then 3rd, we want to increase that student satisfaction on school safety, which is even lower, 56%. Now, the Panorama survey surveys students in grades 3 through 5, and it also surveys students in grades 6 through 10. I'm a former 3rd grade teacher, and I can tell you, in my classroom, it was common that when someone couldn't find a pencil or couldn't find a crayon, someone stole it from them. And we'd have conversations about that. If we're really sure, did we misplace it? Or did I forget to bring it to school, et cetera? So I thought, well, maybe, some of this is just, obviously, I've been there, right? 3rd graders reporting on a survey. So I looked at the 6th through 12th grade survey data. It was 60%. 3rd graders weren't off by much. So we have to think about the data. We have to look at that. But again, we want to increase that to 80%, and that's a leap, but we need to go there. We also need to talk to our students and do a deeper data dive of this. Where is it that we're having issues? Because what we don't know from the data is that at school during the school day. Is it in an after-school program? Is it happening at lunch or recess? Are there certain areas where we feel more unsafe than others? Is it happening on a school bus? Are there things that we can work on? And so, the first part of this will be understanding where that we can make the improvements when we talk about students and interactions within the school environment. So those are our 3 goals. I won't go through all of our KPI indicators. They're on the screen, but you can see it's the same emphasis of how do we know and how will we get there? And you heard how we're going to do that. It's having clearly defined goals and KPIs that help us achieve that, and making sure that we're looking at our attendance when we have required training sessions, making sure our emergency procedures and protocol are being followed, making sure that we have routines that are well established, and plans that are documented. Make sure we have tracking and reporting systems. And that's important. And our principals already know that, and they're already working on that. Because we set up a very robust system for reporting every single month this year of what's happening with our school safety reports. Goal 2, again, we want to increase our professional development for our school leaders. Again, not just on physical safety, but also mental health and social and emotional safety. And again, make sure that we're providing opportunities for growth so that it's not just sitting and talking about information, but how we're actually achieving it so that there's practical application to what we're trying to address in the goal. And then goal 3, we talk about that student satisfaction on school safety. And again, making sure that we're addressing the needs that provide robust, rich, and safe schools for all of our learners. And so with that, that's an overview. Did you have anything you had to add to it? Okay, so with that, that's the overview of Goal 2.
Thank you, Mr. Obley and Mrs. Rath. And so at this time, I'd like to invite Goal Team leads for Outcome Goal 3, exemplary staff. And that would be Mrs. Joyce Hatcher and our Chief of Human Capital, and Mr. Lee Williams II, our Chief Equity Officer.
Patrick and Ron, the starters, so I decided to go through the side so we could fist bump too.
Right, we were gonna let them out fist bump us. Good evening, Chair Alberton, Vice Chair Purcell, board members, and Dr. Felder. Thank you for this opportunity for us to come before you and to provide an overview of Goal 3, which is exemplary staff. As you can see here before, what the outcome goal means is that we want to recruit, hire, support, and retain culturally proficient, highly qualified staff committed to provide all students with an excellent education in a welcoming environment. That is what our goal means. Then we have an equity emphasis on this goal, and you'll find the equity alignment there. We want to hire staff that reflects the diversity of the district, mirrors the demographics of OCS students, population, and who commit to becoming culturally proficient. So if you follow us through this model here, you will see, how does the outcome goal align to our equity plan? This outcome goal is aligned to the equity plan goals 3 and 4. Goal 3 says we build the equity leadership capacity of district leaders, administrators, teachers, staff, and the OCS board by developing equity-orientated leadership skills, mindsets, and knowledge. Goal 4 says we recruit, hire, support, and retain teachers and staff, again, that reflect the racial and language diversity of the student population. What problem is this outcome goal trying to solve? Glad you asked. OCS teachers currently do not mirror the demographic and logistic makeup of our OCS student population. We also, the problem is, what is the problem outcome goal trying to solve? Again, ensuring that students receive a highly quality instruction from teachers who are culturally proficient and feel supported and valued in OCS. And why is this outcome goal so important? Again, for reasons that we've already stated before, we want our students to feel comfortable in their space, and we want them to be able to interact with staff members that look like them and reflect their diversity and cultural proficiency concerns. We also want to model student achievement, indicates that assigning their own race teacher significantly increases math and reading achievement of both Black and white students. Next slide.
I just wanted to lift up, it's also important to understand, and Ms. Hatcher just said it, that having a teacher of color is not only good for the student that they represent, they look like, but it's good for all students, right? If you're really thinking about full diversity and full inclusivity, to see a person who does not look like you stand in front of you and present information is good for all of us.
So with that said, we want to also now look at our strategic goals when we have 3 of them. Mr. Williams, will you present the first goal?
Sure. The first goal for Orange County Schools is retention rate. We're looking to increase by 4% to retain our teachers. Here we have some highly qualified and great teachers. We know that right now we are finding ourselves in a place where teachers are even more valued and more sought after. So our job is to keep our Orange County teachers here so they can engage with our beautiful young minds that we serve.
And you all will see some of this information next board meeting when we begin to talk about our attrition rates and our teaching working condition surveys. Also, staff retention is a big part of our goal. Staff retention rates for teacher of color will increase by 3% every 2 years to 94.8% by 2026.
It's imperative across the nation that we not only find staff of color, but also linguistically those staff members who are able to speak the language of our students. And so here in Orange County, we're also looking to increase our staff of color, but it's definitely identifying our Hispanic students for teachers there and narrowing that gap by 3%.
And then here. And then we also will get into our KPIs, and we're just going to kind of hit those because it's getting a little late. So, for example, some of our KPIs are around goal 1. We want to increase the teacher retention of 81.9%, will increase by 4 percentage points on the average every 2 years in order to be below the state's attrition rate. Again, you all will see that data next board meeting. Our KPIs, one of the things is to increase the percentage of agreement on time in the OCS teacher working conditions survey. Also provide all new OCS with an introductory equity cultural responsive training as part of the district comprehensive onboarding process. I'm just going to hit a couple of these. Mr. Williams, do you want to
Sure.
hit a few as well?
Another part of this retention rate is also for our staff of color. We're looking to create mentorship and affinity group spaces. Currently, right now, we don't have that in our district, and we're looking to create that to support and retain our staff of color. We're to increase participation for these affinity groups, and hopefully have a very diverse conversation about how we can enhance and support them here in our district.
And I think that completes our presentation, our overview. I think we've kind of hit everything.
I would agree.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hatcher and Mr. Williams II. And last but certainly not least will be Mr. Kevin Smith, our Chief Public Information Officer. Mr. Smith is one of 2 goal team leads for Outcome Goal 4, Empowering Culture. So, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Felder, Chair Atherton, Vice Chair Purcell, and members of the board. Thanks for having us do this. Goal 4, as Dr. Felder said, we are definitely last in number, but as you've often seen in this presentation, Goal 4 is sometimes put first. These 3 goals that come after Goal 1 are what Stephen Covey likes to call production capability, right? Goal 1 is all about the growth and the achievement that we want to see from students. And right now we're talking about setting up the conditions that make that growth possible. In fact, make it more likely and really nudge it along. And empowering culture, I like to think of as the groundwater that actually feeds all of the other goals. So I appreciate that we very often get to go first, but batting cleanup for this strategic plan is kind of fun tonight. For anyone who doesn't already know, and I don't know if the TV producers can help us with this, these outcome goals have been sitting behind our members of the board as kind of pillars, backing them up for the past several meetings, thanks to a lot of great work from folks who have helped us put this plan together. And it's really inspiring for those of us who sit out here and watch these things unfold, because we see that these are really, really important. Empowering culture, though, is probably the hardest one for folks to understand until we talk about it and talk through it. I put out a phrase to some of our leadership during the Summer Leadership Institute, saying that we need to achieve a routine of excellence. And I think that I'm really glad that that phrase kind of caught fire. It inspired some folks to think about it. For people who don't already have a routine of excellence, it can also feel like a bridge too far. And so I like to think that what we're doing in Goal 4 is setting up the routines of empathy that can lead to routines of empowerment, which ultimately engender routines of excellence. And that's really what this is about for us. The partnerships that undergird this goal, the culture that brings students together, that brings students and staff together, that brings them together with families, and that unites us with our community is really what this is about. And so when you look at the different pieces that make up Goal 4, it's about making sure that kids and staff can be at school, they can be productive at school, they can be there all day productive at school, and that the people who can make that possible feel empowered to help them with that. I mean, that's really what this is about, and I know that that's what you are all about, because we've been talking an awful lot about community partnerships and the kind of things that this board has powers to do. So what are we trying to solve? We are trying to make sure that parents and families are part of the solution. And in making sure that that's possible, we rely on research. Dr. Dreyer has been very, very helpful in compiling a toolkit of incredibly important qualitative and quantitative research that demonstrates what we already know to be true. The more family engagement you have, the longer kids stay in school, the better they do. The more attainment they have, the longer they stay in school. And therefore, all the things that we want to see, we create a virtuous feedback cycle. So when families are engaged, achievement goes up, discipline goes down, people feel a sense of belonging. Again, that sense of culture starts with empathy, which grows empowerment, which feeds excellence. I'll keep returning to that theme as often as I get up to this podium. You'll hear those three words often. So the collaboration piece is really what we're talking about, and there we go. We basically know that as I said, we need to keep kids in school. We have a fairly strong attendance rate, and we want to make sure that it continues to climb, because really there's anything short of 100% is something worth attaining. We want to keep pushing that number as far as we can, and we'll dig down into the details on this in a moment. Reducing the suspension rate. These numbers don't sound like much, reducing suspensions from 9% to 3% for Black students, but when you stop and ponder that, that means that when you think of 3% as the average suspension rate for our white students in Orange County schools, it means we're trying to make sure that we can prevent, or in other ways, recover and recoup from in advance 2 out of 3 suspensions for some groups of our students. It's a worthy goal, it's an important goal, and it doesn't happen automatically. There are a lot of things that have to be in place for that to occur. We want to reduce suspensions for our multiracial students from 8% to 3% over the next 5 years. And goal 4.3 brings up an interesting part of our challenge that this team has really wrestled with. The highlighted numbers that don't exist, it's because they don't exist. At this point, we don't have longitudinal data. We're setting a baseline. It's really important for us to do that, and working in communications and family engagement, where I collaborate with schools and achievement, where I collaborate with equity, where we collaborate across different disciplines here in the cabinet. It's really important for us to learn how our families best engage with us. It was really good news then, as you can see, we do reference a survey item. Since Panorama has been so successful for us, on the student-facing side, it's really good news that Panorama has a parent-facing survey, which we are definitely looking forward to instituting soon and bringing that data back to you later this fall. So, drilling down into the KPIs, the key performance indicators that will show us that we're moving towards a goal. One of the things we haven't talked about is the fact that there are strategies. Over the next couple of years, you're going to hear from us about the strategies we use to move these KPIs to get closer to our goals, right? That's a strategic plan in a nutshell. So how are we going to increase the average daily attendance rate? Well, we're going to start by dealing with the most urgent schools. We're going to pick the 3 lowest performing elementary schools, 2 lowest performing middle schools, and the lowest performing high school. And we're going to start there and work on the things that need the most attention first. We're going to deal with subgroups that need the most attention as well. Statistically, our Black and multiracial students need more support to continue growing that average daily attendance rate. And then, as we've heard different goal teams talk about tonight, we need to make sure that students feel physically and emotionally safe in order to stay in school. Culture moves the needle. So goal 4.2, reducing the suspension rate. Obviously, we want to increase engagement to make that possible. We want to reduce referrals, or at the very least, we want to have more tools in our toolkit so that when there are referrals, we have better solutions than continuing to attain a 9% suspension rate. And then making sure that there is introductory and comprehensive training. Well, we're starting with the introductory piece, but making sure that every single staff member has been introduced to and enculturated with the values that we think are going to help lead us to success. If that's not happening, then we shouldn't expect the rest of these things to happen. As I said, we are building up production capability, and goal 4 is really happy to go first or last, depending on how you look at it. Our third and final goal for outcome goal 4 is to increase the family partnership and engagement rates, especially with our families who have indicated that they need the support and who show it historically here in Orange County Schools and wherever we do this work. It's really exciting. I was thrilled to come here this summer and start this work knowing how many different things already exist in place and knowing how highly valued the work of our liaisons and other people who engender family engagement in our schools is. And then to learn how many more opportunities there are as we just begin to peel layer after layer after layer back of the different things that we can do and how all of our school staff can be brought into that routine of empathy, which leads to the routine of empowerment and ultimately to the routine of excellence. It's really exciting to see the number of ways that our schools, our liaisons, and all of us who work in Orange County Schools can be put to the service of increasing the number of folks who are logging into Parent Portal. We just had an event a few nights ago. Sadly, the one you saw in your notes from the update, we had to scuttle one event because of the power outage, internet outage. But we know that this drives success. The more information families have and the more tools they have for engaging, the better chance there is that their students will continue to stay engaged and attain. So increasing the number of parent engagement opportunities that are district-led, as well as increasing partnerships within and around the community, and ultimately, growing the number of offerings for what Parent Academy or a Family Academy can do. There are so many things that we're being asked to do, and now it's really, I think, just largely up to us to respond with capacity. So that's all I have for goal 4. And as I said, we're just really excited at the way this creates a virtuous cycle. We've seen it work. You all have seen it work. And it's pretty exciting as we get ready to embark on this. All of us have said we're really talking about the things that we already do every day, but being accountable to you, to ourselves, to our community, and ultimately to our students, I think is probably the most exciting prospect of this, because now once this is in place, it really will inform and structure our conversations as we go forward. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Smith. Do not go far. Just stay yourself right there.
Okay.
And if the rest of the team would join Mr. Smith, if we can move to the next slide, please. And so before we go into questions, I just want to, this is a visual that you've seen before. And so how does all of this come together? How does it all work together? Well, we know when everything we do is rooted in equity. And in Orange County Schools, we define equity as giving all students what they need to succeed. And all means all. And so when everything we do is rooted in equity, to ensure all students receive what they need to succeed, and when we stay focused on our strategic plan, goals, and when we use strong core instruction, when teachers have the data to personalize support for students, and when we keep in mind the social and emotional well-being of not only our students, but our staff, so we develop them as whole persons, then and only then will we impact learning and accelerate growth for every child. So with that, we open the floor for questions, comments.
Questions? Sarah?
I'll go first. First I'll start just with a general reaction and gratitude, which is all of this hangs together in a much clearer, logical way to me now. So I just really appreciate the kinds of revisions that you all have done. And Dr. Sarfo for your input on how to set a quality goal and all of the feedback that you gave. So thank you for that. I guess I have a broader question around the reporting calendar for the KPI. So I had sort of around goal 1, the grade level progress. That's really important. And the in-year monitoring of progress is so important. And so I noticed it didn't have all the details anymore about like MClass and AIMSweb and all of those specifics, but to me, the reporting calendar within a year, not the annual reporting, and all of those other measures that maybe aren't named specifically, those I think are really important for us to nail down and say, like, at these points in the school year, we're going to report to the board on goal 1, not just grade level proficiency, but maybe some other stuff like AP participation, right? And some of those other things that I think are also part of the aim, but maybe aren't named anymore. I like the simplification.
Yes.
So I guess what is the plan for the reporting calendar piece? That may be broader than goal 1, but what's the plan for having a reporting calendar?
You want, so right now, you're referring to the assessment calendar here where different assessments are.
No, sorry. Dr. Sarfo said part of this whole process, right, is having a calendar of like, these are the points at which we'll check in on the strategic plan using these measures. And so
the next phase of this, the improvement process will be developing these strategies and plans. And part of the strategies will come the monitoring of that. And some of those strategies will speak to, for goal team 1, will be some of those benchmark data that will come up throughout the year. And that will also lead to reporting periods that we will present some of the benchmark data as they are done throughout the year.
Okay.
Is that?
Mrs. Smiley, just for clarification, and thank you, Dr. Green, are you referring to how we provided updates last year, say in the Student Achievement Committee meeting? I'm not sure. And are you referring to the calendar that we've already put together? Are there other data points that you'd like to see? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I think there are data points here, it sounds like, for each of the goals, right? Not just on the academic side. And I can't remember where we landed on the calendar for the academic reporting. I guess, is the plan to have a reporting calendar, is that part of the agenda planning that you all are doing?
We do have a reporting calendar that was shared. I can.
Does it include for the other goal areas?
It does.
It does? Okay, so then I must have missed that.
That's
So,
okay.
okay, if it was a very long question with an answer,
But I will say
if you
some
could send
of
that
those.
to me again, that would be
I'm
helpful.
sorry. Some of those data points won't necessarily be shared on the board floor, so they could be shared by way of a weekly update, a report through this Student Achievement Committee meeting, through the Community Engagement Committee. So through committee, they could also be shared. So we're happy to share however the board would like for us to share them, but there are a variety of ways to share the data. So like the family survey that will be going out, we're going to bring those data to the board and not only share what the data show, but the so what of it. What are we doing about it?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think just understanding how the timing of that all fits together, it sounds like
Yes.
there is already a calendar somewhere.
And
that I
we'll
can-
resend that link to the calendar.
Great, thank you.
Happy to do that.
Carrie, then Bonnie?
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for this presentation. I feel like it was really like as close to complete as we've been able to be so far. And just thinking back to when it felt like the strategic plan was, being built from scratch. This feels more like authentic to what we've been trying to do, and now we're continuing to, build out the details. And thinking back to, just last winter when our equity audit named that we had those equity pillars, but that we weren't consistent across the district. I just feel like we keep growing in that rootedness, and I'm really appreciative of that. I also wanted to just mention, there were problems identified, and I appreciate the specific examples, and Mr. Smith's reminder, our call to empathy. But I think some of our problem statements were a little bit aspirational of what we're trying to do. And, we do have naming the problem, for example, like having inclusive environments. We have been, students have shared with us, we haven't always felt like we've provided inclusive environments, or we haven't always had culturally responsive classrooms across the board, you know, so I think we have some problems that we've discussed, and some of them were highlighted, like with our differential suspension rates and things like that. But just wanted to point that out, that this is responding to a problem of, you know, these are meeting needs that we haven't always met well. And then just to echo Sarah's comment on this reporting calendar, I think we're also, if we can continue to capture, that's something that seems like we're still building out too. And if we keep capturing this year what we are reporting on when, so that next year it can be a fuller reporting calendar. It worked well to do this in October, and you know, there's a lot I think we're trying to do, and we're still capturing how we're doing it.
Thank you for that.
Bonnie?
So I have a lot. I'll start with a few things and see where it goes. First, I want to thank Dr. Sarfo, because this iteration of the plan is so much better. It's really starting to get more precise and more focused on real metrics that we can hold ourselves accountable for. So thank you for that. And then Kevin, you get the gold star. And the reason you get the gold star is because you took you took your metrics and you said, but we've got to go down and look by school, because the overall end of grade performance on any of the attrition performance is going to really vary by school. And if we want to have actionable metrics, we have got to drill down by school and by subgroup within school. So we need that kind of measurement framework. There's a couple of metrics that I thought were missing. I mean, one of the things that's in my mind is the world is measuring us every day. The state is measuring us. There's all kinds of groups that are measuring us, and we can't ignore those metrics. And I'm thinking, I'll take the efficiency ones. Transportation is something we're measured on all the time. We need to have a metric around transportation. School grades, nobody likes the school grade metrics, but that's probably a metric that we're going to be measured on. I don't know that we can leave that out. And I want to know how much pizza is being eaten. So we really should have some kind one metrics about how well these things that we're doing are working. One other, and by the way, Dr. Sarfo used a phrase that I've not heard, and I loved it, and called critical levers of change. And that is a really interesting concept, because I bet if we asked each one of us what those are today, it would be really interesting. But I think if we look at it in 2 years, we're going to learn that those critical levers of change are probably different than we believe they are. So I guess so that we've got to run these numbers. So I would like to not see a conversation about metrics. I'd like to run them. We're not going to have all of them. Let's baseline. Let's see where we are. We're in year 2 of the plan. I'd love to run the baseline. I'd love to run year 1 and see where we are. Won't be perfect. There'll be lots of holes in it, but we're going to learn a lot just by running numbers. So I'll stop there, because it's exhausting.
Dr. Sarfo?
Yeah, may I just chime in? I appreciate the feedback so far. One thing I did want to just state is that, again, this should be strategic and focused in, and so we don't want to have it doesn't minimize the work that we're doing in every pocket of the district. And excuse me, I'm gonna have a cough drop in my mouth, but it doesn't minimize that we are still doing the hard work of transportation, and we're still doing the hard work with our children on different spaces. But with your strategic plan, you really still should stay focused in on those critical levers, as I stated before. So you don't want to have a measure for every single thing you're doing in your district. If you have it all in your plan, it's not focused in on those critical levers. So I do want to caution you about adding too much more to your strategic plan, because it is a lot that you have here. Not too much though. It's perfect where it's at right now. I would want to caution you about adding too much more to what you already have.
Sarah?
I wanted to zero in on one particular, it might have been KPI 4.2B, that's what I wrote down. It was around reducing referrals. And that one, we talked about, like, this isn't what are all the strategies we're going to use to change the numbers. It's just what's our goal or our KPI. And this was just a classic example to me of, like, if you just, what gets measured gets done, like if you just focus on changing that number, it can lead to a lot of like not the hard culture change work, right? That like is the sort of good way to get the referrals down, where, teachers are supported to know how to leverage other classroom management strategies and work on instruction. So it's more, all the things that we know can actually impact the number. So that one in particular of reducing the referrals, I just wanted to call out as an example of like, what strategies we use matters so much to getting the numbers down the right way, because I believe we can get referrals down and lead to some different impacts in the classroom.
Thank you for sharing that, Mrs. Smiley. So that's exactly the work going forward, right? So for some of these KPIs, we have strategies. We had strategies that we are already implementing, and so we will need to do exactly what you said to avoid what you also said, keep that from happening, right? Because it's very easy to change that number and not have really gotten at the core of what we are endeavoring to do. So we will be very focused on strategy and the action steps to get to those strategies. Right?
Carrie?
Thank you. I don't know if this is similar to what Bonnie was saying, but something Dr. Sarfo said that caught my attention early on that I'm seeing in here to some extent. I think I have this right, but that we're kind of basing our average annual growth in each metric based on increment of interim growth. Like when we first did this strategic plan a year ago, it's like, well, we want to gain about 20% here, and we're going to do it over 5 years, so that's 4% a year. And it just seemed like that was kind of how we approached everything, because we had nothing, we were in that deep lull of COVID and didn't have anything else. But now we have, we gained 2.3%, so maybe that can be our annual goal. It feels more real when we have like real numbers that we're working with, and I know we don't have that in every area. But am I interpreting what you were saying there correctly, Dr. Sarfo?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Thank you.
Other comments?
I have one more, just going back to goal 1, just appreciating the ambition of the goal of 80% of students will be grade level proficient at the end of this. It is ambitious, but I just really believe that it's possible, and I think it's going to take a lot of hard work, but just appreciate you all going there and not going for tiny increments.
We believe so too. Thank you.
So I want to talk a little bit about my detail, in the weeds metrics. How's that? So transportation, actually school cleanliness is on my list only, and because these are problems for us, and a lot of our, right, and work order turnaround. And I'm imagining a dashboard, and I realize a little bit more than the strategic plan, but in order to know our schools are running efficiently, how do we know? We don't want to hear that there's been an accident in a playground because there's a work order that somebody didn't handle, right? We want to know that if there are work orders affecting the safety of our students, that they're being handled efficiently, quickly and efficiently, and if they're not, we want that to stand out. So how, part of the goal with the metrics is to design them around our business processes, so that if our business processes they should be reporting problems to us. And if we have a backlog that's not being addressed, we want the backlog to, we want to be able to highlight that. So I'm looking for something that looks at work order management, some of those kind of efficiency measures about production operations that knows that our buildings are operating efficiently. I also don't know, and Dr. Sarfo, I don't know if you have comments about metrics around finances. We are fairly, well, from a North Carolina perspective, we are a well-funded school district in the top 5. And I was just curious what metrics we should be holding ourselves accountable for in terms of spending, benchmarks against other districts, anything else.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have anything to weigh in on the financial part at this moment. I would have to have a deeper conversation about what you're looking at when it comes to that. When it comes to the other transportation, and I understand that, right? Making sure work orders are being filled, all that work can still be reported to the board. I just don't know that it necessarily has to be in your strategic plan. So I would say that, making that request would be something you could ask of the team, but I don't know that it should be in your strategic plan. Happy to talk more about financial goals outside of this conversation.
Any other comments? So I have a couple, and thank you all for all the hard work on this. And as everybody mentioned, I really appreciate seeing the evolution of this, especially, given all the challenges we've had through COVID and coming forward. My first comment is more of a concern, especially with goal 1. When I look at the sub-bullets like KPI 1.1, and it says increase reading grade level proficiency among students grades 3 through 8, we have specific subgroups, which implies where the other subgroups, and are they not included, especially when we have all of the groups less than proficient. And that seems like when we talk about equity and we talk about every child getting what they need, every group should be included in there. And maybe the point of what y'all may be trying to push is looking at how do we remove the disparities? How do we remove race being a factor in determining someone's test outcomes? But when I read it and don't put any context around it, if I was a parent and I'm getting, seeing what the overall school is doing, it feels like we're not being very inclusive in those statements. So
So I
definitely
would argue,
clarity around it.
I would actually argue that it is quite inclusive. The overall goal is to address the grade level proficiency for all students. The KPIs are intended to drive focus on those students who are underperforming the most. And so I always use the saying that when you focus on all the students, all boats rise. So you're not reducing any gaps, you're not addressing any inequities. But if you want to see those inequities and those gaps close in, you have to get the bottom up. And so, but as you do that, so does the top go. So the work is being done among all the students, but there is definitely a concerted effort to make sure that the students who need the most get the most, while addressing student performance for all students. And so that overall goal is addressing all students. The KPIs are intended to put some focus on students who are really underperforming.
So that section doesn't have any specific goals. I mean, it says increase reading. So if we do have specific goals for these subgroups, we should list them. So that's my concern.
The KPIs for those goals are specific to the groups.
Right. And there
You
are
may want to bring that up.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Denise.
There are specific metrics for each one of the KPIs. For purposes of this presentation, we just identified without the metrics, but for the board, you will see that there are specific measurable metrics for each of the KPIs.
Okay, I definitely would like to see that because the way it reads is just improve. So
Yeah, no.
I definitely would
It's
like to see that. Yeah.
To, from, to.
Okay. I appreciate the clarity because as it reads, it just is a little
But
concerned.
I'm just curious, Mr. Atherton, because the point you raised is certainly of, concern. I would want to ensure that you're clear, based on what Dr. Sarfo shared, that it is about all children. Every single one of these goals is about all children. But again, that KPI helps us to drill down to the children who are furthest behind. And when we looked at, and we've seen our data over trend data for almost a decade, we have a 3-tiered system with really none of our students really reaching that 80% benchmark, which is what we want. But the students who have been consistently at the bottom are our students with disabilities and our EL students, our English language learners. That next band are our Black students, our Hispanic students, and our economically disadvantaged students. And so we have to focus on all students, but some kids will need more.
I agree. And
Yeah, no, I just wanted to
appreciate
be
the-
clear.
I appreciate the clarity that there are metrics because this doesn't show it. So that helps out a lot. The other, thank y'all all for the clarity on that. The goal
For asking.
4, or I guess it wasn't goal 4, I guess it was goal 3. The question about the disparities in discipline, one of the questions I had is, one of the issues that we learned early on was the code of conduct and character and support wasn't being applied consistently, and there was a lot of individualization of it and determining how things were applied. And so we brought in a company, we looked at trying to really get it crisp on how you interpret that, and then COVID hit. And so the document was handed out, we didn't do the training, and so I'm curious how we go with the training and intent of that and measuring, did we get it right with that? I know there are many aspects, but I know that was one of the key aspects that was in the findings, that wasn't done consistently. And so just wanted to hear some thoughts around that as well.
Mr. Lee Williams II, would you please speak to that?
No problem. So yeah, you're right. We do have the findings that our student code of conduct was not as restorative as we would like it to be.
Yes.
We're still working on that. We're still doing the trainings with our staff. But I also want to lift up, it's not just when we get to the code of conduct right, because when we're there, we're already at sort of a punitive situation.
Agreed.
What we're really looking at is also engaging in our social emotional learning so that we get to the place where there is a self-regulation. There is the idea of how I show up in space, so I'm not then confronted with the code of conduct. So instead of looking at the back end, we're actually working towards the front end. So actually, today, we did our trainings for some of our SMEs. They're school level leaders who will be training staff around how to be more restorative, how to use our social emotional curriculum. Those pieces will help then engage into the classroom. So it becomes part of curriculum, but it's also part of pedagogical practices. Engaging in social emotional learning is not just a tool for self-regulation, it's also a great way to have pedagogy in your space. So ideally, those are two entities kind of working together that will then hopefully do as Goal 4 says to reduce that number, which keeps kids in the classroom, keeps kids learning, keeps us engaging, moves our numbers to 80% for all of our subgroups. It's all connectivity.
Well, I greatly appreciate you talking about before that. Like, I really appreciate it, especially with the social emotional parts of it.
Yes, sir.
Thank y'all. Oh, Bonnie?
Yeah, that was really helpful. Is it realistic for us and all of us to ask, as we make major investments, and these are investments in time, money, disruption, in new curriculums, in the SEL curriculums, and these things, should we be creating expectations about when and where we're going to move the needle on these metrics? And what kind of change, what kind of impact are the investments that we're making having? And should we be projecting that? Because things don't happen right away, but it would, I've been, and Dr. Felder knows, I've been kind of hammering on having more timelines around what we're trying to do and when we expect things to get done and things like that. But should we be creating expectations for ourselves about when we will see improvement? And also using, again, school level metrics to see, hey, this going really well in this school, it's not going so well in this school, we need to focus our attentions on that. But
So, yes, absolutely. I mean, we want a return on investment with every investment that we make. And so, Mr. Lee Williams, the second,
no more
I just want
kids.
to make him the third,
Stop with me.
can certainly speak to the timeline, which you will get an update on. That there's a timeline for, or not only a timeline, but an implementation plan. It's not just to roll it out, but we want to ensure it's being rolled out with fidelity, that it's being leveraged with fidelity. It's only as good as how it's being leveraged, how it's being implemented. And so with that will come data points that we will be monitoring to understand how well or not well curriculum is being implemented.
right, and I'm asking the other question of, is it working? Right. So it's not, is it implementing well, but is it working? Because maybe it's not working in certain subgroups, or maybe it's not. Anyway.
So I think to answer your question, you're asking about all of us, right?
Yes.
Not just the social emotional learners. I think anything about the curriculum piece, what Dr. Felder said is key, fidelity and implementation. So as much as we can spend, and we all want an investment, return on investment, but it's not just around that, it's how do we move it for our students forward, right? So I do believe we will see return on investment. I do think that we must be wise and cautious that we do create a baseline year that allows us numbers to see where we currently are, because we don't have them. And so what we do have, so our panorama data survey, we should see some changes when it comes towards how our students are seeing themselves, how they feel respected in the classroom. Are they hearing language of oppression or not? We should see gauges upon that. Part of what I go back to what you mentioned, though, was, I think it was actually you, Ms. Smiley, we can reduce some of these numbers, but to make sure that we're doing it the correct way. So I think in doing that, you're right, we will have to drill down lower to school levels to make sure. I think that's part of all of our work and plan, is look at all of our schools to ensure that it's working, understanding that in some cases, we may have to be flexible, right? What works in one school, and that's really equity. What works for one may not work for others, and we have to make shifts and adjustments. However, I think I can stand for my colleagues, all of us here, and say that I believe you will see return on investments, but we ask for some time to collect that data first, see exactly what we're looking at, and making those shifts so we can make stronger shifts. As our fearless leader often says, we have to go slow to go fast.
Yes, and I'm just asking you to manage my expectations to say, when should I come back and pester you about where are the results?
Listen, I don't call it pester. You can call me anytime. But no, I mean, I honestly, I think that's something we have to get to. Once we've had the full implementation, then we can kind of start to see how it's rolling out. But I do believe that our calendar of events of how we're coming back to you to present will at least be able to lend for a strong conversation. But pester anytime. I think we're good with that.
Okay.
All right, any other comments? Go ahead.
If I can add to that too, Ms. Hauser, because I think it's important for us as consumers, as we're looking at different products and as we're looking at different programs and things, that we are also asking the questions to the person around, what should we see? What is going to be the impact of this with our students, so that we are making wise decisions on programs and resources, that we're just not buying something for the sake of purchasing something. And those are the questions that we present, that so that we can come back and answer those questions when you ask them, okay, what is the return on this investment? So that we know that we are matching the resources and the materials to the needs of our students.
Sarah?
Can I just make one quick point around this too, which thank you for sharing that, which is, because we are making multiple changes simultaneously, though, we're never going to be able to attribute, I don't think, back to one original source, the improvement. So we are improving the literacy curriculum. We are adding professional development around PLCs for teachers. Social emotional. There's all of these levels. So it's not like an experimental design where it's like, we'll give this school this and we'll give this school this, and now we can see the difference and it made a difference. It's going to be a little tricky to untangle the impact.
Of course. Yeah, I'm not asking for an ROI on these initiatives. I'm asking when we're going to start to see the needle move, and it's a collection of all of them. But when are we going to see the needle move? That's really the essence of my question.
And I think we've seen some with the growth, right? I mean, that was a significant indicator. I mean, it's good. It's good to see that momentum and carry forward. All right, anyone else? Thank you all so much. All right, next we have our Summer Scholar update.
Support all schools. It's a school improvement plan.
Oh, the plans too.
All right, so I'd like to welcome back Dr. Denise Green, our Chief Academic Officer. Joining her is our Executive Director for Exceptional Children in Pre-K, Mrs. Connie Crimmins, and joining the team as well tonight is Mrs. Mariah Morris, who is the Director for Literacy.
So Dr. Felder, I apologize.
Oh, yes, sir.
We had the plans to support all schools and we skipped over that. So I just
okay.
looked
did
straight
too,
down
clearly.
and
All
Ms.
right,
Smiley
you'll-
was kind enough to point that out.
All righty,
So
so
sorry.
thank you. No, I wasn't paying attention either. It's no worries. All right, so next up then will be Miss Lori Carr. Miss Carr is the Chief of Schools and Achievement, and she's going to share a bit tonight about plans for supporting schools this school year. So it's all yours. Take it away, Ms.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Chair Atherton, Vice Chair Purcell, I'm so sorry, board members and community. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight to provide a high-level understanding of the supports that we currently have in place for our 13 schools, as well as those that are forthcoming. And I've got two things to operate here. We'll see if we get there. I've got one going, but not my other. Just one second, I'm sorry. At our last board meeting, you heard about this district strategic plan. You just heard about it in a lot more detail tonight. And just as we align all of our work in the district around those 4 goals behind you, which are centered in data, our schools are rooting their own school improvement plans in data as well. And that moves from our standardized test data to the panorama data we've talked about, to EOGs, EOCs, teacher working condition surveys, all of that. And we align those to the district's strategic plan. Their plans are presented to you every other year. And those presentations that you watched last year, and they were shared with you in this week's abstract for your reference, are much like the strategic plan. They are reviewed annually in light of new data points. At the district level, goal teams meet regularly to work on specific areas of the plan. We come together monthly in cross-collaborative sessions to update each other. And similarly, at the school level, school improvement teams break their work into smaller goal teams. They create plans, they monitor their progress and action steps, and they assess the impact of their plans on student achievement. School improvement teams meet a minimum of twice a month, and they're comprised of teachers at various grades, content levels, as well as parents. It's important to mention right now that many of our schools are still in that recruitment stage for parents. Some of our schools have a much easier time having parent volunteers come forward, but even our schools that typically have very high parental participation are struggling right now to identify folks for their PTO board level positions within the schools. So that's still a work in progress. But the teams and the district monitor their plans for fidelity of implementation and for impact. Last year, Dr. Doyle introduced a really highly effective approach to school improvement planning, providing consistency to all of our schools. As you heard at the last board meeting, this yielded some fantastic growth. Chair Atherton just referenced that. We are continuing with the foundational elements of this approach, but this year we'll be housing our plans in an NC STAR platform this year. That's something that North Carolina Department's Public Instruction utilizes across the state. School improvement is a continuous cycle and process, and per the abstract, the development of the plan is focused on assessment, creation, and monitoring. In the assessment stage, schools are conducting needs assessments and doing root cause analysis. They've already looked at their TWCs, their FAMS reports, their data reviews, and really done that comprehensive needs assessment to get down to root cause. The next stage is creating a plan. And that plan is to have common direction based on and incorporating research-based practices. NC STAR utilizes the language of key indicators. And within this framework, which I'll share more about in coming meetings, there are 130 best practices or 130 key indicators represented. We start at each school by looking at 12 of those key indicators. Those are directly aligned with the work that we are doing at the district level right now. The MTSS work, the social emotional learning work, the PLC works, everything that we've referenced and talked about this evening. From there, schools move into the monitoring stage in which they assess their plans for fidelity of implementation, for impact, and for evidence of their impact. NC STAR is a tool that is utilized for charting improvement and for documenting a school's blueprint for success over time. can speak to a personal experience in utilizing that. I worked for DPI for several years, from 2013 to 2018, and was personally responsible for working with our lowest performing schools and districts throughout the state, and coaching the principals and superintendents and leadership teams in utilization of this framework in order to move their schools forward. This tool initially can be a little daunting because it does not feel like a traditional school improvement plan. It looks a little bit different, but as we've talked it through already with principals and sat through a training and looked at all of the pieces and components, we've already begun to identify the alignment between the work we're doing and how we can move this in many ways to help us gain success, but also to gain greater transparency. This tool allows real-time transparency in that all stakeholders are able to log in and view the school improvement plan at any given time. So while these plans will look different than you've seen in the past, the content will continue to be rooted in research-based best practices, in data, specifically aligned to the individual school's needs. So as you just spoke about a little bit earlier, each school is at a different place, as whether we're looking at Ms. Hauser's point around operational efficiencies, whether we're looking at panorama data and school safety, whether we're looking at social emotional need or individual academic needs. Each school, each of the 13 schools, is at a very different place in our district. This tool and this framework will allow us to target where the schools are in moving forward while still aligning them with our district's strategic plan. As we look at that, I wanted to share a little bit about the layers of support that we have in place at the district. Support is provided to school leaders and to teams at the school in very different layers, from professional development as new curriculum is rolled out, to participation in PLCs and MTSS meetings, to serving as thought partners with classroom teachers. I don't think it's a surprise at all for you to hear that the Mariah Morrises and Connie Crimmins and Jennifer Parkers and Emily Myers are in schools all of the time. They're supporting teachers, they are with principals, they are in meetings, they are team teaching, they are getting resources, they are doing all of those things. But what you might not realize is that that's happening, that level of support is happening in all of our departments at Central Services. For example, our chief equity officer right now is in the planning process with a high school teacher to do some co-teaching in his classroom. His office is also working side by side with teachers to focus on school-based meetings. They're supporting our foundational diversity, equity, and inclusion work at the school and classroom level. They're sharing resources, they're problem solving and building teacher capacity. Our student services teams operate in the same way. With the horrific tragedy that our district has faced, our counseling and student services teams have been deep in the school side by side with our counselors, with our teachers, with our principals, providing those supports, providing ears for the students and really hearing what they are needing, what they want to do, how they need to grieve, and how we can help them through this. One of the, I think you can see that all of those things are directly and clearly aligned to the work of school improvement. But what you might not think about is, I'm going to go back to you again, Ms. Hauser, your point about the operational pieces, because we have an example around that as well. And so while our schools are developing their school improvement plans, they've got to think about all of the barriers that are in place and that are interfering with their ability to reach their goals. I think about an elementary school principal who recognizes the struggle that her students were having in A, getting to school on time, B, just showing up on a consistent basis, and then recognizing the challenges post-pandemic that their community is facing. The increased price of gasoline, the short time frame to get everybody through the car rider line. This principal was incredibly strategic in thinking about that, realizing that there was no way they're going to be able to focus on academics until that barrier was removed, reached out to the operations department and was very strategic in creating a new traffic pattern. So really looking at when buses arrived, when they were cleared out, how they could keep their parents from turning around and going back home when that line was too long and they knew they couldn't burn up gas for that amount of time. She has been able to decrease her tardies tremendously. Attendance has improved a great deal. And we know as a result of that strategic operational approach that we're going to have a direct impact on achievement as well. So I wanted to share that story because I think sometimes operations, facilities work, lives in a different place in our head. But as we know, it is directly tied. I could provide endless examples of all of this, but I think this gives you a strong picture of the flavors, as we look at the layer cake, of the flavors of support that we have built into central services in this proverbial cake. In my role as Chief of Schools and Achievement, up to 90%, and really 90% of my time is to be spent in schools with principals. As I have been working to build relationships with principals, with schools, with teachers, the primary focus of my time has at this point been spent in thought partnership and coaching conversations. We're now at a place where we're starting to shift that work and move into a direct support with their school improvement teams, with professional learning communities, with MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support meetings, with job-embedded approaches to coaching and feedback. So that will be differentiated based on observations, based on the needs of the school. A variety of learning walks will also be taking place in partnership with central services and across schools as leaders learn from and with each other. My role also includes the facilitation of a district support and monitoring team, which both oversees and supports school improvement work. As a team, we will be able to identify potential barriers to school improvement early on in order to help remove and address them immediately. We will also provide resources, be they human, fiscal, material, in a timely manner to be able to support schools' work. As extended members of their improvement teams, will also play pivotal roles in assuring that school teams have addressed and assessed the right data points and that they've really dug down and identified the correct root cause. And then that we're helping them to assure that they are identifying the most effective best practices to move their schools forward. Finally, we have heard from principals, and over the past year, one of the things they've asked for is time with their peers in professional learning communities. We are, as I work with my colleagues, Mr. Williams and Dr. Green, we are building that into our regular learning leadership team meetings. So this Thursday when we meet, we have problems of practice that principals have raised and want to share with their colleagues to elicit feedback and suggestions. We're using a consultancy protocol. We will also be utilizing that time frame moving forward for them to share best practices. I've had principals say to me, my school really struggles with early literacy, but I happen to see that, I'm going to name the school, Grady Brown is doing great with that. I want to know what Chris Marks and his team is doing over there. That happens all the time across schools. They want to learn from each other, so we are creating a space for that collaboration to happen. So those opportunities will really help us to expand best practices from living in isolation to impacting our schools across the district. At the October 10th board meeting, you will hear a lot more about school improvement plans. We'll dig a lot deeper, how to access them within the new platform, an opportunity to really take a look at all of them and understand NC STAR at a greater level. Per the abstract, and as a reminder, the full school improvement plan review occurs every 2 years, which occurred last year. But at the October meeting, we will dive into their revisions. You will also be receiving information at that time about improvement plans for Gravelly Hill Middle School. And with that, I'm going to open it up to any questions that you might have.
Before we get to questions, we're getting close to time, and I would recommend us extend, especially since we have staff here on some of the material and would not want to have them come back. Dr. Felder, how long do you think we need?
I would suspect 15 minutes. Would that work? Yes.
Okay, can we get a motion to extend for 15 minutes after 10?
So moved.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. Questions? Go
Saying I
ahead.
can go next? Awesome. Thank you so much for that. A couple of things. One, thrilled about the cross-school collaboration and the sort of learning from each other is massive. Love that your team is going to be working with school improvement teams about root cause analysis and really getting to the right things. Having sat on a school improvement team, I do think there's a piece of this where the culture piece and the ability to be vulnerable, there's sort of like the accuracy of your self-assessment and then the willingness to go there, especially with district folks also in the mix and parents in the room, that I think is really tricky. So I hope you all are thinking about that.
Absolutely. And if I can share one example, Dr. Green and I sat with a school improvement team meeting, in a school improvement team meeting just the other day, and talked about this process, talked about the level of support that the district would be offering. And two of the team members actually were coming from different districts in which they utilized this framework. And they were at low-performing schools, one of them in Stanley County, one in Guilford. They both were at F-designated schools, and spoke about the importance of that culture of candor. And they said, we're going to fight, but it's going to be that really good fight. We're going to debate. We're going to talk about it. They were really invested. And I think, to your point about culture, a lot of that is about how we set the tone, the fact that we are there to roll up our sleeves alongside them. And it's building that trust. And so knowing that they aren't seeing me just on school improvement team days, but that I'm in the cafeteria. I've seen Dr. Green in the cafeteria doing lunch duty, sitting down in the classroom with students, that we are in it with them and with it together. I think your point is a good one, and it's something we need to be really cognizant of, but I have no doubt that we can really work through that alongside them.
Bonnie?
Yeah, thank you for this. And yeah, I love the collaboration. I know people have been looking for that for some time. One of the things that we are interested in is equity-based resourcing to our schools, because it's been like all based on allotments and prescribed funding, and we never get feedback. So your example was a great one. Kids don't, in some schools, the kids just aren't showing up. They're not getting on the bus, or whatever reason. Are there times where we need to put another counselor, another social worker in the schools? Are there, we're not hearing that kind of feedback. Behavior. We have heard that attendance and behavior are serious problems at some of our schools. How are we measuring that? Which ones? And are there supplemental resources that we could put in the schools that would help with that? More interventionists, for example.
Sure.
So how do we get that feedback from the school improvement process? Because it's kind of put us to work. Say, hey, we need this.
Absolutely. I'm glad to hear that you're open to that as well. I think having that district level support team there and being present, our role is partially to help identify barriers and work actively to remove them. So if we are hearing those things, now I'm hearing that you are open to, hey, we might need some additional supports. But what happens is that I am the facilitator with that, along with my colleagues. We come back to cabinet extended. Cabinet members, other members of central services can come in. So if it is an issue with facilities, we may bring in Nick Mincy. We may bring somebody in to sit at the table with us to work through those pieces. If it is, we really need additional manpower, then we would bring that to Dr. Felder, and it sounds like there's an openness to taking a look at that, but I would defer to Dr. Felder on that.
And if I could just add that sometimes it is, how are we using the resources we have? So it's not always, additional resources, but again, as part of that root cause analysis, why does the data look the way that it is? We have to also look at how we are using the resources we have. But
Right, right, yeah. And I'm looking at like real numbers, you have 500 kids in a Title I school, and there's more behavioral issues than if you have 300 kids in a Title I, and I realize the allotments handle some of that, but I don't know. Again, you get it, but we really, the board has been asking for more equity-based resourcing for some time, and we don't have the information from you that says this would make a difference. And frankly, if we want to hold you all accountable, and we're serious about it, then you need to come to us and say, you want to hold us accountable for this, you're going to need to give us these additional resources. That's kind of the.
And we've done
the
that,
model.
and again, as is called for and needed, but we want to be clear about what the needs are. Yep.
Okay.
One more quick thing. I know we're wanting to move quickly. NC Star, I'm glad that everything's going to be moving in there. The district used to use it. And so, but like historically ever, I don't think that those NC Star, like parents haven't known how to access any of that. So I hope that that's part of it.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing is, I always really liked, when I was on a school improvement team, those, I just looked up the name of them again, those Wise Ways research summaries of like, if you want to work on parent engagement, here are research-based strategies. And I always thought it was a shame we weren't like tapping into that
Absolutely.
more. So,
And they've expanded well beyond that. Now there are videos, there's a lot of links in the state website, it's NC Star Weebly, but there's a plethora of information resources right there. But to
that
your
the
point,
teams are using, or?
so we are starting to explore that. So we are at a point right now of, we've done a reintroduction to the process and the framework, understanding that schools have done a great job developing their school improvement plan. So now it's just transferring the data into a new framework that helps us propel things forward in utilizing that continuous cycle of improvement. And that is a key piece. So I've presented some to principals last week. I'm doing follow-ups with assistant principals. We'll be doing follow-ups and creating some videos and supports for community members. And I think the utilization of the Wise Ways and those other tools are incredibly powerful. I appreciate you bringing those up.
All right, any other comments? I just have one.
Please.
So every time I've reviewed school improvement programs, really academically based, and Sarah mentioned looking at community engagement, and one of the things I would challenge us to look at this time around is the community, not so much the community, but the culture and climate for the teachers, right? What can we do? Because every school is different. And we hear that there are unique things that could help in those cases. I'd really love to see the schools come back with, here are some things specific for the culture and climate that would help improve. And if there are things we can do, that's great. Like Bonnie was saying, if we can facilitate that, would love to hear it. But given that's one of the items we've talked about quite a bit, if we can get that, that would be fantastic.
And they have, principals and school improvement teams have been charged with utilizing their teacher working condition data, which addresses just those points, Chair Atherton. So we will be looking at that and then developing action steps around the areas where each school has prioritized levels of need.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Can I run with that just a little bit? It's a fantastic point. Thank you, Will. Just, the idea of teacher turnover, for example, we've talked as a board, and obviously it's a huge expense, but things like, do we need to offer special stipends for Title I teachers or EC teachers or something? But these are the kind of, is this contributing to turnover in the school and undermining culture and climate? That's kind of stuff that would be
They're
really
important points to
interesting.
look at. Sure.
Anyway, thank you for the points. Great point.
All right,
Thank you
all.
very much.
Thank you. And since we had such a great practice, can we have the Summer Scholars update?
Well, good evening again, and I'm very delighted. I always love to come forth and bring my team to share information with you, so I'm going to turn it over to the two best, Ms. Crimmins and Ms. Morris, who are going to talk about Summer Scholars and Read to Achieve program.
Good evening again. We will make our 15 minutes. So hi, I'm Connie Crimmins. I'm here to present on Summer Scholars. As you know, that is the overarching, the overarching name for all of the programs that you see: Read to Achieve, Credit Recovery, Grades 4 through 8 Camp, Extended School Year, and Compensatory Services. And then when we talk about Summer Scholars and our summer programming, we really had 3 overarching purposes: to work on closing the learning gaps, accelerating our students into the next school year, building and fostering those relationships, as we know that they are so important, and then keeping students motivated to learn. I just noted that during the presentation, there were a couple items. We wanted to keep that eagerness to learn. I heard that in one of the presentations. And then improvement of attendance. And so we know that students who sometimes stay in that learning space want to continue that learning space. So we want to keep that motivation going. Throughout all of the Summer Scholars programming, we wanted to highlight that there was a site coordinator, teacher and teacher assistant, support staff, and then assessors for RTA camp because of the state testing requirement that is connected with RTA camp. And under teachers, I do want to highlight that there was ESL teachers, special education teachers, all of those specialty teachers there to support the learning needs of students. And now I'm going to turn this over to Mariah Morris, Director of Literacy, who's going to give the update on RTA camp.
Thank you. So the RTA Summer Reading Camp is a subsection of the larger Summer Scholars program that Ms. Crimmins was just referring to. It is legislated, and it's the only program that serves our youngest students in the district as a legislative reading camp option under Senate Bill 387. Senate Bill 387 specifies that reading camp shall be offered to any third grade student who is below grade level in reading at the end of their third grade year, as well as any second grader who demonstrates difficulty with reading development. It leaves it open as to whether districts provide reading instruction to students younger than grade 2. Orange County Schools did make the decision to offer it to our first grade students last summer as well. Under Senate Bill 387, we are legislated to provide 72 hours of reading instruction during the summer months. We can go beyond that with other instruction, adding in math and other SEL components. However, we do have to include 72 hours. So let me share with you a little bit of our summer reading camp facts and figures. We opened summer reading camp at 4 sites across Orange County Schools, one at Hillsborough Elementary, one at Pathways Elementary, one at Grady Brown, and one at New Hope Elementary School. We had 4 phenomenal site administrators. Our site administrators came to us from a variety of different schools, 2 serving as literacy coaches during the regular school year, one as an EC facilitator, and one as a classroom teacher who also has his degree in school administration. This was very important to us so that we determined the importance of maintaining instructional leadership alongside all of the operational leadership that comes with running a summer reading camp. We had 33 classrooms open across the district for grades 1, 2, and 3. We had a total of 42 teachers, DLCs, and media specialists serving our students. We had 104 hours at each camp location. We had 318 eligible students who chose to attend our phenomenal camp. And we had countless smiles, high fives, aha moments, and books read across our summer months. During our summer reading camp, we made sure to maintain our high level of research-backed science of reading aligned instruction, utilizing the core curriculum that we found so impactful over the school year. For phonemic awareness, we focused on our Haggerty instruction. For phonics, we did Letterland and From Phonics to Reading. For fluency, we encouraged our teachers to use fluency passages as well as readers' theaters. And then for our vocabulary, background, knowledge, and comprehension, we piloted the use of the Achieve the Core Read Aloud project, which we had purchased for our K-2 teachers to implement this school year across the district. In addition to this, we challenged our teachers to make sure that our students were engaged with their instruction in multi-sensory interactive capacities. We had very small classroom to teacher ratios this summer, maxing out at the max of 12 students for each teacher, and oftentimes fewer students in each classroom. We told our teachers the importance of using this opportunity to build instruction that engaged our children and got them up and moving and brought literacy and phonics to life. You'll see a few of our pictures of students writing with shaving cream on desks, teachers bringing in different hands-on activities to build background knowledge and vocabulary. One teacher having her students build little mini monster robots and then write about it after reading, as well as countless other ways to bring interaction to life. So I would like to just take a moment to thank our teachers for embracing this challenge and during their summer months, making sure that learning really came to life for our little ones. When we take a look at our Read to Achieve Reading Camp data, we will see that our attendance did have 318 students. Breaking that down across our grade levels, we had 63% of our eligible first graders attend, 55.2% of our eligible second graders, and 48.4% of our eligible third graders attend. At the end of our summer reading camp, we had 32 total students reach grade level proficiency. This is not indicating growth. This is indicating that after 4 weeks of instruction, they were actually able to reach grade level proficiency when they were not able to across the school year prior. This is a significant jump from last year, so we are very proud of that. We had 10 first grade students reach proficiency, 14 second grade students reach proficiency, and 8 third grade students reach proficiency as measured by either the Read to Achieve assessment in third grade or M-Class Dibble's 8th edition assessments in K-3. I will now turn it over to Ms. Crimmins to share our Summer Scholars data.
All right. So just a little bit about the 4-8 camp. It echoes the same premises that Ms. Morris shared about the RTA camp, engaging lessons. And if you look here, 6 hours of camp each day. That's quite a bit. It was broken down Monday through, whoops, that should be Thursday, pardon me. It was Monday through Thursday, although there was aftercare, Friday care provided. There were 160 students served at 2 sites, Gravelly Hill Middle School and AL Stanback during the school year, and I was remiss, I did not put that. We did offer Hillsborough. There were 12 students that did attend during the Hillsborough grades 4 camp. 3 subjects were covered, math, literacy, and science, and each, there's a rotation, and they each got, or each student got an hour of that a day. And the curriculum and the activities were constructed around the areas of need that was most identified. So in math, it was fractions and decimals. In reading, it was summarizing and comprehension. And in science, it really was STEM activities to continue to engage students in that love of learning. They all had 1 session of physical education today, and total there were 96 staff members, teachers, teacher assistants, EC staff, digital learning coaches, counselors, and front office staff. If you look a little bit at the data, 70% of students increased their oral reading fluency from the beginning of camp to end of camp. And oral reading fluency is that ability to read what it is, read fluently. So their word calling got better, their prosody, the ability to just read more quickly. And what that does is it has an impact on comprehension because you're not trying to word call as you're trying to understand the meaning of words. And then the next measure we used was our AIMSweb data. So AIMSweb was given at the end of the 21-22 school year, and we compared that to the BOY, the beginning of the year AIMSweb data. That was just the window just closed for that. In math, 46% of students that we were able to assess on both measures demonstrated growth, and 57% of the students in reading demonstrated growth. Just as an aside, well, we will be digging deeper because that just says that there was a change in their growth. What we really need to dig into, and we couldn't do it because the window just closed for the beginning of year AIMSweb, but what I want to do is to be able to see, did a student move from a red or at risk into green, meaning that they have gained those skills. Another part of the Summer Scholars was high school credit recovery, and here we have the numbers. A lot of students attended, and I think that's a really great number that 187 students attended. And I know that our site administrators really were calling, kind of pounding the pavement to get kids in. A lot of credits were recovered, more than 100. That is a significant amount if you think about the motivation of students to come and work on this during the summer. And again, for all of our sites, it's important to know that transportation and nutrition, breakfast, lunch, and a snack were provided. And again, just these additional details that I think are important as we think about summer programming as a whole. Again, that aftercare and Friday care is so important for parents to be able to have an option, a full day option and a Friday option so that they do have childcare available. Transportation for students who do not have that option to have a parent bring them, especially as it's been noted throughout the meeting. The gas prices, all of those things that make it difficult for parents to be the transporter. And then it's important for our students with disabilities, their extended school year, and anyone who received compensatory education services that was integrated into our Summer Scholars program. And just some photos and feedback. My favorite from all of these were seeing students smile while learning that reading can be fun. And that's just a testament to the Summer Scholars staff on how hard they work to engage students, to connect with students, and to instill that love of learning. We do have a few next steps that we'd like to share. In October, we're going to complete a start, stop, and continue debrief with all of the departments that have a hand in a Summer Scholars programming. And then we're going to begin planning for next year, and that will involve staff that participated. We'll send out a parent survey just to make sure that we are providing the most comprehensive program that we can. And then again, the further examination of data. Oh. And any questions?
So board, can we get a 5-minute extension?
I move a 5-minute extension.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you. Questions? Bonnie?
Thank you for this. You all are having way too much fun, and thank you for having fun teaching our kids. So in the summer. I have a question about participation because, could we do more to get more kids to enroll by involving them earlier?
That's good feedback. And I know that with Read to Achieve, they're under some constraints because it really is based on whether or not a student passes the end of grade test. But with our 4-8 camp, we certainly need to look at our kids who need this the most, because our funding, again, part of this is ESSER funding. So we need to look at how we can budget effectively and get the students who need it the most in. But you bring up a really good point, is how can we make that all work together?
So if I might suggest, because I get the sense that the teachers have a pretty good idea of how their kids are doing. And if, could we use, rather than waiting for the test scores, because what I understood is that made it so late that parents had already found alternatives, and we missed an opportunity. So-
Yes, Ms. Hauser, that is a great point. This school year, what we decided to do to increase attendance from the previous summer was we sent out a preliminary note after middle of the year testing in February that said, due to your child's middle of the year assessment score, your child may be eligible. Here are the dates. Please reserve dates. Do you need transportation, Friday care, after school care? And that really drove our planning of teacher allotments, materials, school sites. And so that was one thing that we did put in place so that parents could understand as they plan vacations and other summer camp opportunities. And I think, to your point, we need to look at what is the missing link between signing up and then necessarily attending.
Thank you.
One reason for starting in October this year with the planning to address some of those factors.
Sarah?
Just appreciate all the work you all do. And one, well, I would love for us to get to a place where we have sort of a consistent set of measures of success of the summer program that we can then look at year over year. So Ms. Morris, you mentioned that the number of students who reached grade level proficiency was sort of an improvement over last year and something to be proud of. And that's awesome, so yay. But being able to see a trend line over time, I think would be so helpful. And especially in the Read to Achieve, I think what I'm especially curious about is what percentage of students grew and by how much, because reaching the grade level proficiency is awesome, and probably there are limits to how much you can do in the summer, but if everybody's sort of on a different trajectory, then that's good information.
Sure, and we can provide that data if you would like that. We do have the M-Class data that we can measure from their end of year M-Class assessment to the end of the summer. And what we did this summer that was different from years prior were we hired an assessment team for a team to go in, and they were only literacy coaches or reading interventionists so that we could have consistent M-Class data, because M-Class is one-to-one. And so anytime you have that one-to-one, you do bring in a level of subjectivity that an EOG or RTA test doesn't have. And so we did have a consistent set of 8 assessors who assess all students. So we're happy to provide that data.
Gary?
Thanks. Just real quick, because I know this was a really great presentation. I appreciate all the detail. I did notice with RTA that it's interesting that you mentioned, Ms. Morris, that we're really only required to do the 3rd grade and the emerging 2nd grade students with those challenges, but we had the highest percentage of eligible students who were 1st grade, and then that dropped from 63 to 55 for 2nd and for 48 for 3rd. And so what is the lack of appeal for 3rd? Maybe they're doing sports camps and they don't want to do Read to Achieve, or maybe they're discouraged and they don't want to do another summer of it. So I'm curious what got more 1st graders to families to have them show up, and what happens by 3rd grade.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question. We don't know at this point what has led to the differences in attendance rates, but I think going a little bit deeper into why would be time well spent, and asking our students and our families to provide some of that feedback for us to help us know how to target them for next year.
Any other questions? Just one for me. So how do parents find out the progress of their students over the summer? Do they actually get a report back or anything to say, hey, your student has gained this much, or hey, they're now proficient? What do they get as feedback from the program?
From the RTA side, the 3rd grade students who take their Read to Achieve test should receive a print-off from their school site with the Read to Achieve test score. So if parents have not received that, they can reach out to their test coordinator to receive that information.
And so that they'll get that over the summer? So after they do the summer, you mentioned some of them.
So we sent them out, I believe it was the day after they assessed, we sent them home with students. And for the students who didn't attend, we mailed them.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions? Dr. Felder?
So just wanted to note that there was an additional item on the agenda, student assignment, reassignment, and planning process update. So I suspect we will jettison that agenda item.
Especially given we have,
Yes.
we're looking at a retreat to discuss that.
Can I ask one last question on the this summer camp? And I'm sorry, I don't mean to, behavior. You know, we talk a lot about academics and we tell ourselves that behavior and attendance is really critical to academics. And I was curious how behavior factored into getting selected for this and how the camps help to improve behavior for kids.
So we don't use behavior or attendance as a metric. Because if those things are impeding or are a problem, you would think that they would impact the academics. To address behavior throughout the camp, the PE sessions are not just go out and play, it's not free play, it is structured play. So kids are learning how to interact with one another. And I think it goes to the small ratio of student to teacher and creating those relationships. There are not a lot of discipline problems. There are kids who have behavior, but it doesn't rise to the level of a disciplinary action.
Yeah, good.
All right, with that, we have one other item. I believe the consensus is to remove that from the agenda and have a motion to adjourn.
Is that workable for staff to move this to the next agenda, or
The student reassignment.
quite late, but?
So I'm sorry, is the question?
Ms. Smiley was asking if it makes sense to do that.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't going to be holding up anything super time.
So I think Mr. Obley would be the best person to answer that question. Mr. Obley? Did you hear the question?
No, I was just going to respond to the urgency. Again, the timeline, that's what we're up against, is a timeline. We have a need. We've identified steps in order to do that through a potential reassignment plan that would come back to the board in about 16 months now. And so we talked about the retreat. I guess we'll have an upcoming retreat and we'll continue the discussion. There are intermediate steps that we'll discuss that could also be implemented to assist with that. So that would be the urgency.
Great. I guess I'd just say if this is, it sounds like if we move this to the next meeting, that would be fine.
Or the retreat, that's correct.
Or the retreat. Okay. Great.
Or work session, or however it's being.
Thank you.
All right, so do we have a motion to move this off this agenda and adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.